Chapter 12:29. For a child to suddenly appear in such an empty city and draw circles on the sidewalk, there was something amiss no matter how one looked at it. Sun Yulua bore Enlin's teachings in mind, and he knew that as a sword immortal, he had to face the fear in his heart and overcome it. Thus, he stood in front of Enlin and Dabai and unsheathed his snowy white longsword with trembling hands. He pointed it at the child on the ground and scolded in a cold voice, as if he was trying to bolster his courage, "You little brat, why are you scrawling on the ground?" Enlin and Dabai. Was there something wrong with this opening line? The child's hands abruptly faltered. He slowly stood up and turned around. To his surprise, the little boy in the dark yellow linen garments had a particularly delicate and handsome face. "Big brother." The little boy's ethereal voice was tinged with a hint of hoarseness. Sun Yulua shuddered with fright. Don't come any closer. If you move again, I'll kill you." All of a sudden, the surrounding space fell silent. The little boy stood rooted to the spot like a wooden statue, not even blinking his eyes. It was as if everything had stopped moving. Sun Yulua was given a massive fright by this scene. The little boy really didn't move after saying that he would kill him? Was he really that cooperative? Right at this moment, the little boy's eyes began to bulge. Splat! Blood splattered through the air as a pair of eyeballs rolled onto the ground. There were 2 holes on his face, from which tears of blood flowed relentlessly. "Oh my eyeballs are falling out." A peculiar smile suddenly appeared on the little boy's face. Sun Yulua's heart seemed to have stopped beating in that instant, and his mouth gaped open as he stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before his eyes. Ah! Sun Yulua finally let loose a scream, and he almost dropped his sword as he stumbled back in retreat while holding on to Dabai tightly. "Let go of me, you coward! I'm going to strangle you to death, woof!" Dabai roared with rage. Enlin was also given a fright by the little boy's actions. Even though it was a little thrilling, it shouldn't have reacted as violently as Sun Yulua, right? The screams were in the hundreds of decibels, and the sound waves could form shock waves. Even the little boy whose eyeballs had popped out of his sockets was startled by Sun Yulua's reaction, and he forgot how to speak. This is so fun." The little boy seemed to have found some kind of fun toy, and he picked up the eyeballs and put them back on his face before looking at Sun Yulua with excitement on his face. Sun Yulua felt like he had been mocked by a ghost, and an enraged expression appeared on his face as he slashed down with his sword. "Eat this." The sword light was dazzling, and its sharpness arrived in an instant. The little boy swung a hand through the air with a wide grin before slashing it toward Sun Yulua's longsword. Bang! Crack! Right before Sun Yulua's astonished eyes, his longsword clashed with the little boy's hand, and the sound of metal clashing erupted. Sparks flew as the longsword was snapped in half. How could this be? My sword is a spirit tool." Sun Yulua's eyes widened, and he was unable to react for a moment. A hint of excitement flashed through the little boy's eyes, and he suddenly opened his mouth, upon which a crimson tongue shot forth like a venomous viper before instantly wrapping itself around Sun Yulua's neck. A sticky and slippery sensation imbued with extremely terrifying power swept through Sun Yulua's entire body, and he screamed again, "Sword immortal Enlin, save me! Why is this tongue so long and slippery? It's so scary." What? Sun Yulua's legs gave out from under him, and tears welled up in his eyes as the little boy's tongue wound tightly around his neck. He slashed at the little boy's long tongue with his broken sword, only to find that no matter how hard he tried, it was as if he were slashing at the hardest metal in the world. Hee. The little boy grinned at Sun Yulua, as if he was very amused by Sun Yulua's terrified expression. Enlin and Dabai realized that things were not as simple as they appeared, and they immediately charged toward the little boy. "Stop, Wolf! Piss off!" Dabai and Enlin sprang into action at the same time. The silver wind blade domain swept toward the little boy in a frenzy. Unlin also lashed out with his evil-slaying sword, and an inky black sword projection pierced through the heavens. The little boy's expression shifted, and he evaded Unlin's attack with a ghostly movement technique. At the same time, his tongue was still wrapped around Sun Yulua's neck, unwilling to let go. Sun Yulua's neck was completely constricted, and his tongue hung out of his mouth as his eyes rolled over into the back of his head. He was unable to even breathe, and he looked as if he were about to die. Dabai's domain struck the little boy's body, but it was unable to harm him. Let go of Sun Yulu! A loud roar suddenly erupted in the distance. A few blue-robed figures began to appear before charging toward the little boy. Those are the 6 disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect? Why are they here? What a coincidence! Unlin's expression shifted slightly. An impatient expression appeared on the little boy's face as he spat on the ground several times in quick succession. The saliva transformed into sharp crimson swords that pierced through the air at an extremely fast speed. Look out! Zhao Siming yelled in warning as he positioned his sword before his chest to defend himself. Boom, boom, boom! A series of explosions erupted in the sky. Terrifying sword power blasted all of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples flying again. No one can save him. He's mine. The little boy chuckled. Sun Yulua was on the verge of tears upon hearing this, and he roared with indignation, "There are so many people here. Why do you have to target me?" The little boy cocked his head to the side. "Because you're afraid of ghosts." Sun Yulua's mouth gaped open with a dumbstruck expression. Was it because he was afraid of ghosts that ghosts liked to bully him? This was way too much. Unlin slashed his sword toward the little boy again, and light suddenly flashed from the inky black blade of his sword. Immediately afterward, an extremely adorable little girl in a black dress with a chubby little face appeared. Little Xie pounced toward the little boy even faster than Unlin, and her little hands shot forth like lightning to grab onto the little boy's tongue with excitement on her face. Ah! The little boy was struck by a sense of fear for the first time in his life. He immediately released Sun Yulua's tongue and tried to retract his own, only to find that little Xie had a death grip on his tongue, and he was completely unable to struggle free. Hee. A pure smile appeared on little Xie's face, and there was a hint of curiosity and excitement in her eyes. A ferocious expression appeared on the little boy's face, and he instantly bit through his long tongue. After his tongue was severed, he retreated at an extremely fast speed. His speed was like a flash of lightning. Little Xie faltered for an instant before looking up at the little boy's fleeing figure. She knew that she wouldn't be able to catch up to him, and she puffed up her cheeks in anger. Another cry of surprise erupted. Little Xie turned around to find Sun Yulua pointing at her with a pale face and trembling uncontrollably. What the hell is this thing that suddenly appeared? Is it a higher-level ghost? Save me! Sword Immortal Unlin, save me! Little Xie, Unlin. Chapter 1230. This idiot is calling me a ghost. Can I kill him? Little Xie asked expressionlessly. Calm down, little Xie. He's just been scared silly, and he'll recover after a while. Unlin tried to dissuade little Xie as he held onto her hand in a tight grip. He knew that with little Xie's explosive temper, there was a good chance that she would attack Sun Yulua if he didn't stop her. Wait, you're calling her little Xie? Do you two know each other? Sun Yulua's eyes widened. Little Xie glared at Sun Yulua with a cold expression and didn't say anything. At this moment, Zhao Siming and the others also arrived beside Sun Yulua, and they looked at the adorable little girl with curiosity on their faces. Of course I know her. Unlin waved the sword in his hand with a smile. This is the sword spirit of my evil-slaying sword, and her name is Little Xie. Everyone instantly fell silent upon hearing this. All of the Heavenly Sword sect cultivators stared blankly at little Xie with wide eyes. Sword spirit. She's a sword spirit that has successfully attained a spirit body. Heavens, our heavenly sword sect only has 2 swords that have transformed into true sword spirits, and both of them are in the hands of the sect master and the Grand Elder, if we don't count the sword spirit that escaped. Those swords took countless years to nurture, but who would have thought that Unlin would attain a sword spirit at such a young age? And it's such an adorable sword spirit. I'm going crazy with jealousy. All of the Heavenly Sword sect cultivators stared at little Xie with scorching light in their eyes, and some of them were even swallowing uncontrollably. What was the biggest dream of a sword cultivator? Aside from cultivating, the biggest dream of 99% of sword cultivators was to possess a sword spirit. A sword spirit was more valuable than any beast pet or treasure, and it was a symbol of a sword cultivator's identity. Little Xie tugged on Enlin's hand as she spoke in a childish voice. These people are even more disgusting than you are. All of the Heavenly Sword sect cultivators. Enlin, little girl, don't you know that you just set off a map cannon? Sun Yulua made his way over to Enlin with an excited expression. Sword Immortal Enlin, your sword spirit is so adorable. I knew it. My idol is the best. Not only does he have a sword spirit, but the sword spirit is also so cute and pleasing to the eye. The coward frantically flattered Enlin, then changed the topic. Your sword spirit is so cute. Can I hug it? Scram! Little Xie immediately yelled before Enlin had a chance to say anything. A dazzling black sword projection erupted from little Xie's palm before striking Sun Yulua's chest. Sun Yulua felt as if he had been struck by a sledgehammer, and his chest caved in. His body felt as if it had been torn apart, and he threw up a mouthful of blood as he flew back over a kilometer. Hiss! When the other 6 disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect saw this scene, they couldn't help but gasp again. This sword spirit really dared to attack them. Didn't they know each other? Enlin massaged his brows with a speechless expression. Little Xie even dared to attack her master, so it was only natural that Sun Yulua would be attacked. It was his own fault for asking for trouble. Everyone else wanted to touch and pinch little Xie's chubby cheeks because of how adorable little Xie was, but he wanted to hug little Xie. It was no wonder that he was attacked. What pure sword intent! Zhao Siming's expression shifted again as he sensed an extremely pure sword intent from little Xie's attack. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples repressed their thoughts and didn't dare to do anything else. Even Sun Yulua, who was so close to Enlin, had been slain by the sword spirit. How could they dare to do anything else? Say, why are you here? Enlin turned toward Zhao Siming and the others. Zhao Siming faltered slightly, and he seemed to be a little hesitant. Xue Shan pulled out a blue roulette before explaining, "We're following the needle of this roulette, and it can point to a place with the densest Yin energy nearby." Enlin was enlightened upon hearing this. This was indeed the place with the densest Yin energy nearby. The Heavenly Sword sect's ancient sword was a Yin-type sword, and it liked to go to places with dense Yin energy. This roulette could point to places with dense Yin energy, so it could be said that it was the best tool for finding ancient sword. However, Enlin wasn't going to be envious of them. Dabai's nose was much better than the roulette. "I'm sorry, sword spirit little Xie, I shouldn't have said something like that." Sun Yulua clasped a hand over his chest as he flew over from the distance with a deathly pale expression. Little Xie pouted slightly upon hearing this, but she didn't say anything before jumping back into the evil-slaying sword. "Seeing as we've taken care of everything here, let's keep going." Enlin rode on Dabai and rose into the air again before flying toward the inky black mountain in the distance. He was looking for the Blood Eruption Mountain, so he naturally wasn't going to stay in the city for too long. Xue Shan pulled out her roulette to find that the needle of the roulette was also pointing toward the mountain up ahead. She looked at Zhao Siming and the others, and they could all see the awkwardness in each other's eyes. Thus, the 6 Heavenly Sword sect disciples also flew toward the mountain up ahead. Enlin's head throbbed as he looked at the people behind him. Xue Shan and the others were also quite dejected. They really wanted to explain in a loud voice that they really weren't following Enlin. The needle of the roulette was pointing in that direction, and they really couldn't do anything about it. The mountain outside the city was over 10,000 meters tall, and there was a series of winding mountain ranges on either side of it. Dubai could sense extremely dense energy from the summit of the mountain, so he flew toward it first. Along the way, Sun Yulua approached him again. "Sword immortal Enlin, how did your evil-slaying sword nurture a spirit?" he asked with a curious expression. "I'm not telling you." Enlin rolled his eyes. "Then Sword immortal Enlin, where did you obtain this sword? It's clearly not an ordinary sword, so it must be quite extraordinary, right?" Sun Yulua asked. Enlin's expression darkened. "Can't you control your mouth?" Sun Yulua's voice faltered, and he looked at the evil-slaying sword, which was glowing with a frosty light. They flew toward the summit of the mountain. As they drew closer and closer, Enlin was already starting to feel a little disappointed. This mountain clearly wasn't a blood-erupting mountain, as it didn't even have a volcanic crater. That's right, there were only inky black rocks at the summit. There wasn't even a small hole, so where was the blood supposed to come from? The three of them landed at the summit of the mountain. "There's nothing here, so why is the energy so dense?" Enlin's brows furrowed. "My senses are correct. There might be something inside the mountain. Woof!" Dubai unleashed his domain and slashed a deep trench into the rock formation with his claws. Following the appearance of the huge crack, what surprised everyone was that the entire mountain began to shake violently. Zhao Siming's expression shifted drastically as he approached the mountain. "Be careful, everyone!" A cavernous mouth suddenly opened up at the center of the mountain. Red liquid gushed forth from within the mouth. PFFF! The red liquid surged like a waterfall in the sky, creating an extremely spectacular sight to behold. The mountain was throwing up blood. Chapter 12:31. Blood-colored liquid gushed out and surged toward the disciples of the Sky Sword Sect. The Heavenly Sword Sect disciples immediately formed a defensive sword formation. One returned to Void Stage Mighty Figure and 5 Soul Formation Stage Powerful Beings unleashed Boundless Sword Intent at the same time, creating a Blue Sword Intent Barrier. The Blue Sword Intent Barrier was knocked back several kilometers by the Crimson Liquid, and the 6 disciples suffered severe backlash in order to maintain the defensive formation. They felt as if their internal organs had been torn apart. What a terrifying power of blood and Yin! Zhao Siming's expression was grave, and he was considering retreat. It was quite clear that Dubai had attacked this mountain, but they had somehow become the scapegoats. The mountain was spraying blood at them. Dubai and Enlin were also dumbstruck. This is the legendary blood-erupting mountain? Why is it different from what I had imagined? Woof! They had thought that the blood-erupting mountain would erupt blood from the top like a volcano. However, they didn't think that the blood-erupting mountain would actually erupt blood from its F***king mouth. "Ants, how dare you disturb my slumber? Go to hell!" Gao Shan spoke. His voice was deep and thunderous, like the fury of heavenly thunder. "It really is a mountain spirit. So the extremely rich ghostly energy I sensed was coming from it, woof!" Dubai was astonished. Right at this moment, countless rocks on the mountain suddenly transformed into tentacles that reached toward Dubai. Dubai immediately fled into the distance with Enlin in his arms. "Sword immortal Enlin, watch me!" Sun Yulua drew his sword and slashed out a series of sword projections to shatter all of the rock tentacles. This was a mountain, and it wasn't scary at all. It was finally starting to look more majestic. Die. Countless holes suddenly appeared on the massive mountain. Even though they weren't as large as the mouth from before, the terrifying power of Yin instantly swept through the surroundings, striking everyone with trepidation. Specks of red light appeared within the holes, and it was as if countless crimson eyes were staring at them in the darkness. "I, the mountain spirit, have refined my body for 10,000 years, refined my blood for 10,000 years, and cultivated my soul for 10,000 years. I am not someone that ants like you can offend. Die. The cries of 10,000 ghosts came from the high mountains. Sun Yulua's legs gave out from under him. Boom, boom, boom. Countless amounts of blood-colored liquid suddenly shot out from the hole. From afar, it looked as if a huge mountain had suddenly spurted out countless flowers of blood from all parts of its body. Every single one of their blood splatters contained extremely terrifying energy that could corrode, melt, and freeze anything that came into contact with it. Sun Yulua held his sword horizontally in front of him to ward off a splash of blood, but the power of and frost threatened to freeze his blood, and his long sword had been corroded to the point where it had become completely dull and lusterless. "Let's retreat," Zhao Siming shouted. He knew that this colossus was not something they could fight against. Puff, 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 fresh blood spurted out endlessly. The disciples of the heavenly sword sect fled frantically. Sun Yulua's face turned pale with fright at the sight of the countless streams of blood flying toward him, and he stumbled back in retreat. A white figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It was none other than Enlin and his supreme steed, Dabai. After unleashing the origin energy of the netherworld, Enlin's aura climbed to the return to void stage, and a black light erupted from the evil-slaying sword as the true intent of the 6 strikes of the war god seemed to be able to pierce through the heavens. 3 techniques, 100 sword technique. 99 white celestial swords pierced through the air, leaving a series of dazzling trajectories in their wake, and all of the crimson liquid that came into contact with the sword projections were instantly pulverized. The huge mountain ghost spirit hurriedly unleashed layers of ghostly energy to defend itself. However, the 6 strikes of the war god unleashed by Enlin in his origin energy of the netherworld form was already his full power. The mountain ghost spirit didn't have the power of the divine Tao, so it was dreaming if it wanted to defend itself against this attack. Whoosh! The white celestial swords tore through the ghostly energy defenses before puncturing the mountain's body. Wah! The mountain ghost spirit roared with agony. Every single part of its body had been punctured by the violent sword projections. 99 massive holes appeared, from which blood gushed forth, creating an extremely bloody scene. The mountain ghost spirit's slow movements made it a sitting duck. The 100th sword strike. The final sword strike. The evil-slaying sword's sword projection condensed to the extreme, and a paramount sword intent surged through heaven and earth. Just as Enlin thought that the evil-slaying sword was about to strike the mountain ghost spirit, a little girl in a black dress suddenly appeared before gripping tightly onto the hilt of the sword. Enlin's mouth gaped open. Little Xie stared expressionlessly at the mountain ghost spirit before slashing her sword downward. An inky black sword projection extended for several dozen kilometers, parting heaven and earth and engulfing all things. Heaven and earth were instantly plunged into pure darkness, and only the mountain ghost spirit's blood-curdling cries continued to reverberate through the air. When the darkness dissipated, everyone was astonished to discover that the gargantuan mountain over 10,000 meters tall had been sliced in half. Its vitality had been severed, and blood flowed like a raging river across the earth. The mountain ghost spirit died just like that? Xue Shan murmured. What a terrifying sword strike! Zhao Siming drew a sharp intake of breath. The fiend's celestial ghost mountain had forced them into a corner, but it had been insta-killed by Enlin? The heavenly sword sect disciples had yet to come to their senses. Enlin flew toward Little Xie with an excited expression on his face. Little Xie, you're way too powerful. I feel like my 100-sword sutra is even more powerful now that you're using it. Little Xie pursed her lips and raised her head proudly. She was just about to fly back into the evil-slaying sword when Enlin caught her. Little Xie. Enlin pinched Little Xie's chubby cheeks with a smile. You've done so well. Tell me, what do you want me to reward you with? Little Xie looked at Enlin expressionlessly. Can you get your filthy hands off me? Enlin ignored her and continued to pinch her cheeks. It was soft and smooth, warm and bouncy. It was so fun. Sun Yulua was drooling. Just as little Xie was about to raise her sword to attack Enlin unleashed his divine weapon origin energy toward her. Little Xie moaned as a blush appeared on her face. She finally put down her sword and pried Enlin's hand away before glaring at Enlin before jumping back into the evil-slaying sword. Enlin was still a little unsatisfied. A straightforward person would not resort to insinuations. He could play with this face for 10 years. Big brother, something's coming out of the mountain, woof! Dabai suddenly yelled. A crimson bead suddenly leaped out of the mountain and fled into the distance. Enlin's eyes lit up. You want to run? He unleashed his wind sword and wings of wind at the same time, and his speed instantly broke through to 10 times the speed of sound. He grabbed toward the bead, and vital energy enshrouded the air to form a cage that imprisoned the bead. Divine Inspection Technique. Sky Sealing Dark King Bead. Collect the 9 dark beads scattered by the Dark King to obtain the true inheritance of the Sky Sealing Dark King from the Dark King Palace. A smile finally appeared on Enlin's face upon seeing this information. He had obtained the 6th Dark King bead. The mission of this trip was complete. Chapter 1232. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples were filled with complex emotions at the sight of the elated Enlin. It seemed like they were going to be shocked and envious spectators again. I have to admit, Enlin really is a very powerful sword immortal. Xue Shan's eyes rippled as she looked at the white figure in the distance. Enlin had displayed his prowess as a sword immortal time and time again, and he had struck a chord with the Heavenly Sword sect disciples over and over again. Zhao Siming heaved a faint sigh. Forget about that. Let's continue to search for the ancient sword. The sooner we find it, the more disadvantageous it will be for us. Everyone nodded. Let's go back, Dabai, Enlin said with an elated expression. Sword Immortal Enlin, are you really going to leave? Sun Yulua was a little reluctant. He had to continue to search for the lost ancient sword of his sect. If Enlin decided to leave, then he would have no choice but to part ways with his idol. I've already accomplished my objective, so I have to go. Enlin waved a hand. Keep up the good work, Sun Yulua. Sun Yulua patted his chest with battle intent burning in his eyes. Don't worry, I won't let you down. Enlin nodded with a smile, but he was thinking to himself, only an idiot would have any hopes for you. With how scared you are of ghosts, you'll probably be scared to death by the ghost before you find the sword. Xue Shan pulled out her disc. Now that the mountain ghost has been eliminated, the needle has changed again. The place with the most Yin energy is in this direction. She extended a finger and pointed in a certain direction. However, before anyone had a chance to do anything, Enlin was just about to leave when the evil-slaying sword on his back suddenly began to tremor. Ding! The evil-slaying sword rose into the sky before flying toward a certain direction. Holy F***CK? Enlin's expression shifted. He only came to his senses after a full second. His evil-slaying sword ran away. Chase it down, Dabai. Don't worry, big brotherin, I'll definitely help you catch up to little Xie. Woof. Sword Immortal Enlin, wait for me. 2 people and a dog began to fly in a certain direction. They were heading in the direction that Xue Shan had indicated. Xue Shan bit down on her lower lip with an aggrieved expression as tears welled up in her eyes. Why did we become their followers again? The corner of Zhao Siming's mouth twitched. After struggling for a few seconds, he said, Let's not waste any more time. Let's catch up with them. The 6 Sky Sword sect disciples once again followed behind Enlin. Enlin chased after the evil-slaying sword for several dozen kilometers, but the evil-slaying sword plunged into the depths of the mountains like a pitiful little girl. Boom! The pitch-black blade was inserted in front of the gate of a temple with white walls and red tiles. Little Xie, what are you doing here? Enlin flew over from the distance with a perplexed expression. Dabai was panting heavily from exertion, and his tongue was hanging out of his mouth. Little Xie, are you trying to tire me out like a dog? Woof. Little Xie didn't say anything, and she seemed to be preparing something. And Lin turned toward the temple with a curious expression. It was already in an extremely dilapidated state. Even though it was constructed from a special type of wood, it was already showing signs of decay. Could it be that there's something strange about this temple? And Lin murmured as he made his way into the temple. Don't worry, Sword Immortal and Lin, all evil and filthy things are but fleeting clouds. Sun Yulua swallowed nervously as he pulled out his broken sword from Enlin's body. He wasn't saying that to comfort Enlin. Instead, he was saying that to comfort himself. The two of them slowly made their way into the temple, and a putrid aura wafted toward them. Sun Yulua's body shuddered as he surveyed his surroundings with a nervous expression. All of a sudden, the oil lamps and candles on both sides lit up at the same time, all of which were eerie green in color. Ah! Sun Yulua screamed as he jumped up into the air. Enlin pressed a hand down on Sun Yulua's face before grumbling, "Don't make king fuss over nothing. It's exactly because of people like you that I've been to these places that I've become more and more fearful of." "I'm sorry." Sun Yulua had only just apologized when he suddenly screamed again. This time, the scream was so sudden that Enlin's body shuddered, and he flared up with rage. "What the CK is wrong with you now?" Sun Yulua pointed up ahead as he spoke in a trembling voice. "Look at the god worshipped in this temple. Does it look familiar to you?" Enlin turned toward the god up ahead to discover that it was a little boy with delicate features. As expected, it was very familiar. Wasn't this the statue of the little boy who had tried to scare them on the city wall? Just as Enlin was feeling a little surprised, a sinister smile suddenly appeared on the little boy's face as his mouth opened wider and wider. A tongue shot forth and instantly elongated before winding itself around Sun Yulua's neck like a spirit snake. Help me!" Sun Yulua screamed hysterically. History was so eerily similar. The only difference was that Sun Yulua was completely unprepared this time, and he seemed to have been given a huge fright. His entire face was red and pale as saliva flowed from the corners of his mouth, and he almost fainted. Hee hee, a crisp, eerie chuckle sounded. The little boy was very amused, and he began to chuckle with glee. "This doesn't look like that little boy. This is that little boy." Enlin was astonished. No wonder the evil-slaying sword had flown here so excitedly. It had sensed the little boy's presence. Sure enough, the statue slowly transformed back into the little boy in a dark yellow linen robe. A nimble and smooth tongue was still wrapped tightly around Sun Yulua's neck. Sun Yulua was on the verge of suffocation, and he struggled relentlessly, but his neck was bound too tightly, so he couldn't even cry out for help. This was a good thing for Enlin. "Let go of my underling at once!" Enlin roared with rage as he drew his ancient sea immortal sword. The evil-slaying sword was still outside, so he could only make do with this intermediate-rank immortal tool. Golden void lightning revolved around the ancient sea immortal sword, illuminating the entire temple with a golden light. Demacia! Enlin raised his sword and slashed it toward the little boy's tongue with the power to destroy all evil and filthy things. Splat! The little boy's tongue was sliced in half again. The boy howled in pain. Knowing that he was no match for Enlin, he immediately fled toward the exit of the temple. His figure was as fast as a ghost and as fast as lightning. That's right, he had unleashed his most proficient movement technique again. At this speed, even Enlin was unable to catch up. However, right at this moment, a resounding boom erupted between heaven and earth. A sword projection erupted from the evil-slaying sword. An inky black sword intent formed a massive sword net formation that enshrouded the entire temple and cut off all avenues of escape for the little boy. Little Xie flew through the air in a black robe with a pure smile on her round face. "You won't be able to get away now," she spoke in a domineering voice. "You must be mine." Enlin drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. My God! My little Xie is going to accept a harem? Chapter 1233. Little Xie's emotions were completely disrupted upon hearing Enlin's words. She almost wanted to put the matter of the little boy aside and go beat Enlin up. The little boy's body crashed into the sword intent formation before being repelled. He immediately pounced toward little Xie with rage as his hands turned a dark blue color, and his attacks were imbued with extremely terrifying sharpness. Little Xie's expression did not change in the slightest. She turned her petite body to the side and evaded the little boy's attacks at an extremely precise angle. At the same time, her hands shot forth like lightning as she locked onto the little boy's wrist before kicking his stomach viciously with her delicate foot. Boom! The terrifying collision created shockwaves that swept forth for over a kilometer. The little boy's eyes widened from the kick, and he threw up a mouthful of blue blood before crashing into the temple, where he left a massive crater in the ground. "Is that all you've got? If that's all you've got, then I wouldn't even bother to take you in." Little Xie looked down at the little boy from above. Even though her features were quite young and tender, her superior and domineering queen aura was on full display. A ferocious expression appeared on the little boy's face, and the flesh on his hands fell off to reveal his bony white bones. Sun Yulua almost vomited upon seeing this. The little boy roared as he pounced toward little Xie, and his bony hands were imbued with extreme sharpness as they slashed toward little Xie. Even space itself was sliced apart in their wake. Little Xie harumphed coldly upon seeing this before swatting at the little boy's bony hands with her tender, white hands. "She's going to block that attack with her body?" Sun Yulua's eyes widened. Enlin pursed his lips. "Little Xie is a pinnacle immortal tool, so what's wrong with using her body?" Sure enough, the bony claws clashed with the tender, white hands, upon which a loud screeching sound erupted. Sparks flew, and the little boy's hard and sharp bones were cracked open by little Xie's palms. Little Xie turned around and lashed out another kick at the little boy before her. Boom! Amidst the collision, the little boy was kicked into the formation and spat out another mouthful of blue blood. Before he even had a chance to catch his breath, little Xie had already appeared before him, and she mercilessly slapped him into the ground right before his eyes of shock and horror. Boom! The ground shook again. The little boy was lying on the ground, and before he had a chance to get up, little Xie rushed over to him and rained down countless punches upon him, each of which was lethal. Boom, boom, boom. Enlin, Dabai, and Sun Yulua stared at the scenes unfolding before their eyes with flabbergasted expressions. The arrogant little boy was completely powerless against little Xie's attacks, and he was beginning to doubt his own life. Didn't little Xie say she was going to take him in? Why does it look like she's trying to kill him? Enlin stared at little Xie with astonishment on his face. Too tragic. How could such an adorable girl be so violent? Sun Yulua murmured to himself in astonishment. From the looks of it now, it was not unjust that he had suffered that sword strike when he courted death. At least, the little boy's experience was much worse than his. Zhao Siming and the other 5 who had arrived late were also shocked by this scene as they stood outside the sword slash. Enlin's sword spirit is so terrifying. We definitely cannot provoke this woman. I can't be fooled by appearances. Everyone began to grumble. At this moment, the little boy's body had already been completely deformed by little Xie's punches, and his body was gradually becoming more and more insubstantial. "Spare me! Spare me! I was wrong, I won't do it again," the little boy wailed and begged for mercy. "That's enough, little Xie. If you keep this up, this ghost really is going to die." Enlin also tried to dissuade her. "Ghost?" Little Xie cocked her head to the side. "Who told you he was a ghost?" "Huh!" Enlin didn't understand what little Xie was implying. At this moment, little Xie launched another merciless punch into the little boy's face. Bam! An explosion erupted. The little boy exploded. Everyone was dumbstruck, thinking that the little boy was going to be crushed to death. However, a dark blue longsword suddenly appeared before little Xie. The terrifying sword chi energy continued to spread. The frosty sword intent seemed to be able to freeze space itself. This time, almost everyone's eyes widened as a thought occurred to them. Why was little Xie interested in him? Why was little Xie able to detect him and say that he wasn't a ghost? This boy who liked to play tricks on people. He was actually a sword spirit. It's the Blue Dream ancient sword. It's the ancient sword that gave birth to a spirit that escaped from our sect. Zhao Siming exclaimed. No wonder the little boy ran away so quickly. He's the ancient sword that was lost by our sect. How could an ancient sword that escaped from the heavenly sword sect be weak? Xue Shan also came to a sudden realization. Almost at the exact same moment, all of the heavenly sword sect disciples' eyes lit up with scorching light. Right at this moment, little Xie grabbed onto the ancient sword and said in a cold voice, "You're mine now." Gasp! All of the heavenly sword sect disciples were given a fright upon seeing this. And Lin was also given a huge fright. At the same time, he praised little Xie in his heart. Little Xie was planning to beat this sword spirit into submission before taking it into her harem. Sure enough, little Xie began to draw a divine symbol in midair. This is a slave contract. You'll be my underling from now on. An intrigued expression appeared on Lin's face. He didn't think that sword spirits could enter into slave contracts. Absolutely not. This is the ancient sword of our heavenly sword sect. You don't have the right to do this. Zhao Siming yelled in an urgent voice. This belongs to our sect. If you accept it, you'll be provoking our sect. Please reconsider, Mr. Lin. Xue Shan also tried to dissuade him. Stop. If you do this, you'll have to face the wrath of our heavenly sword sect. Another disciple yelled. Lin instantly burst into laughter upon hearing this. Is the wrath of your heavenly sword sect very scary? Lu Mingxian was kicked out of the 4-9 immortal sect by me, so how much is your wrath worth? Lin turned toward the heavenly sword sect disciples outside the sword formation with a smile on his face. Besides, the Blue Dream ancient sword has given birth to a spirit and escaped from the heavenly sword sect, which means that the ancient sword has regained its freedom and is no longer the property of your sect. Little Xie subdued him with her own power, so he should be little Xie's underling. That is indeed the case. Living beings with independent thoughts are essentially independent beings, just like how beast pets should not be forced to return to their own sect. This is the consensus of all the sects in the kingdom of the Nine State. Sun Yuluo nodded in agreement. Zhao Siming flared up with rage. Sun Yuluo, are you a member of the Heavenly Sword sect or the 4-9 Immortal sect? Sun Yuluo recoiled slightly upon hearing this. Don't waste your breath on them. Let's just do what we're supposed to do. If they want to make a fuss, they'll have to break my sword formation first, little Xie said in a domineering manner. Zhao Siming and the others trembled with rage upon hearing this. Little Xie's spell formation was extremely advanced, and they really wouldn't be able to break it. No one can take what belongs to the Heavenly Sword sect. An ethereal voice suddenly sounded in the distance. I can break a mere sword formation with a single hand. As soon as he finished speaking, a dazzling golden sword ray landed on the sword formation formed by the pitch-black sword rays. The sword projection tore a massive gash into little Xie's spell formation, as if it had pierced through the darkness. Chapter 1234. Little Xie's spell formation had been broken in an extremely violent manner. Her opponent had to have attained the power of the Divine Tao, which was at least at the Return to Void final stage. Everyone turned their gazes in the direction of the sword slash, only to see a blue-robed sword immortal walking over through the void. He held a faint golden immortal sword in one hand and a yin disc in the other. His facial features were chiseled and cold, and his eyes glowed with a frosty light. Lin immediately felt like this man had the demeanor of a sword immortal, and he immediately sensed that he was quite powerful. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples were extremely excited upon seeing this man. It's Brother Ouyang Xia. This is great. Brother Ouyang Xia is a top-rate sword immortal at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage. He'll definitely be able to take care of this. We can take back our Blue Dream Ancient Sword now. All of the disciples discussed spiritedly among themselves as Ouyang Xia made his way toward Little Xie. Let go of the Blue Dream Ancient Sword. It belongs to our Heavenly Sword sect. Unlin interjected, Oi, the ancient sword that has nurtured a spirit is already a complete life form. According to the rules of the sects on the Taichu continent, if it escapes, the Heavenly Sword sect won't be able to decide who it belongs to. First come, first served. Ouyang Xia glared at Enlin with a cold expression. It belongs to the Heavenly Sword sect, and it will always belong to the Heavenly Sword sect. No one can take it away from it. Enlin's expression darkened. Are you going to throw away your dignity just to take back the ancient sword that has nurtured a spirit? The ancient sword that has nurtured a spirit is extremely rare. So what if I take it back by force? Ouyang Xia spoke with a haughty expression. At this moment, Little Xie had already inscribed a divine symbol in the air, from which a black light burst forth, creating ripples of sword intent in the air. Ouyang Xia's expression shifted upon seeing this. Stop! Enlin instantly appeared before Little Xie with a smile. You want to take the sword? You'll have to get past me first. Don't think that just because you defeated trash like Ao Meng, almighty figures at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage are inferior to him. I'm going to make you understand just how puny you are compared to me. An extremely dazzling divine Tao light burst forth from Ouyang Xia's golden immortal sword, and the space around him began to twist and crack as sword intent surged forth. Hurry up and accept my contract, Little Xie said in an indifferent voice. The Blue Dream sword trembled in fear. After sensing Ouyang Xia's presence, its hesitation lessened and it pounced toward the black divine seal. Piss off! Ouyang Xia roared with rage as he slashed his sword toward Little Xie. A golden sword light shot through the heavens and the earth like a golden crescent moon, and it contained boundless and domineering energy of the divine Tao that was capable of obliterating and shattering all things. This was a sword strike that was even more terrifying than breaking through Little Xie's defensive formation. This was Ouyang Xia's full-powered attack. With Little Xie's current power level, it was very likely that she wouldn't be able to take this attack head-on. Enlin stood in front of Little Xie with an indifferent expression as he pulled out his vermilion bird mirror. He even had the leisure to turn around and urge Little Xie, hurry up and make a contract. Ouyang Xia was enraged upon seeing this, and he felt like he had been insulted. The price of arrogance was death. However, right before everyone's astonished eyes, Ouyang Xia's extremely domineering sword strike was miraculously deflected in the instant it came into contact with Enlin. Ouyang Xia's heart jolted, and he immediately positioned his sword before him to defend himself. However, his enraged attack was not going to be blocked so easily. The golden sword projection tore through the air with unstoppable force. This Heavenly Sword sect disciple was instantly knocked flying for several kilometers by his own sword strike, and his blood churned within his body as his sword intent wreaked havoc, and blood trickled down from the corners of his lips. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples were dumbstruck. Their peerlessly powerful Heavenly Sword sect disciple had been severely wounded by Enlin's attack? What kind of strange artifact is this? Ouyang Xia looked at Enlin with a hint of wariness in his eyes. He saw Enlin pull out a mirror. It was also at this moment that a crisp ringing sound erupted. The Blue Dream sword had officially become Little Xie's underling. No! Ouyang Xia stared at her with shock and rage as boundless golden light erupted from his immortal sword as he charged toward her again. Meanwhile, Enlin unleashed his Fire God mode and charged toward Ouyang Xia with divine flames and holy flames revolving around his body. 4 times, Fire God Fist. A fiery light as dazzling as the sun erupted from his fist, and the space in its wake twisted and cracked as all things melted into nothingness. Ouyang Xia could sense an extremely dangerous aura from Enlin's fist. He slashed his sword toward Enlin, and the power of the divine Tao surged as a dazzling golden light erupted from his sword. However, Enlin's fist actually managed to deform Ouyang Xia's sword projection with an extremely terrifying force. A massive force surged forth and instantly enveloped Ouyang Xia's entire body. PFFF. Ouyang Xia threw up another mouthful of blood as his body flew back. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples were dumbstruck. Their senior brother had been blasted flying by Enlin again. Isn't Sword Immortal Enlin supposed to be skilled in the sword? Why is he so bad as even with his fists? Sun Yulong murmured. Enlin's aura surged as he made his way toward Ouyang Xia like a fire god. Didn't you say that I'm insignificant compared to you? Why do you keep throwing up blood? Is your body in a bad condition? Ouyang Xia's breathing accelerated as he gritted his teeth and roared at Enlin, "Come at me again!" Golden sword projections lit up the world as divine flames incinerated space, and the two clashed in the air again. Boom boom boom. Shockwaves surged for close to 10 kilometers as light illuminated the dark heaven and earth within the dead spirit demonic land. A smile appeared on little Xie's face as she looked up at Enlin. He's quite reliable. She then turned toward the blue dream sword. The blue dream sword shuddered slightly before flying around little Xie in a fawning manner. A smile appeared on little Xie's face. Even though you and I have established a sword spirit master-slave contract, you were still refined by a human and made him your master. What do you think of my Enlin? The blue dream sword tilted its blade slightly. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Oh? You're saying Enlin doesn't understand your heart? Do you have someone else in your heart? Little Xie asked with a meaningful smile. The blue dream sword nodded in agreement. Who is he? Little Xie asked. Sun Yulong was just enjoying his idol's battle when he suddenly felt a chill run down his back. What's that? He turned around to discover a little boy lying on his back with a 100-degree smile on his face. His eyes were bulging as he licked Sun Yulong's cheek. Sun Yulong, of! Sun Yulong let loose a scream of several hundred decibels, and he felt like his consciousness was about to leave his body. Save me! His legs gave out from under him, and he collapsed to the ground as he pleaded for little Xie's help. Little Xie turned to Sun Yulong with a peculiar expression. You're talking about him? The little boy nodded before sticking out his tongue and licking Sun Yulong's neck. Sun Yulong's entire body trembled. That familiar yet terrifying sensation made his entire body go limp. Little Xie. What a weird hobby. Chapter 1235. Third Elder Zhu Yunshan's sweeping cloud sword technique is the #1 sword trapping formation in our sect. If you don't want to piss off, then hurry up and make a decision, little Xie said in a cold voice. I'll accept you as my master. Before you make a decision, think about yourself first. Obtaining a treasure that is far beyond your own power is a disaster, not a stroke of luck. An inky black sword projection engulfed heaven and earth as Zhu Yunshan's blood-curdling cries erupted. Zhu Yunshan's expression shifted, and he also slashed his sword toward little Xie. Zhao Siming and the others instantly fell silent. The little boy's voice suddenly sounded from behind Sun Yulong. Sun Yulong looked at the oncoming sword projection with no fear on his face, and he didn't even take a single step back. The blue dream sword wanted to accept him as its master? What a joke! When the light reappeared, Zhu Yunshan had already hurtled back in retreat, and there was a massive gash on his chest from which blood was gushing forth. Enlin and little Xie both burst into laughter. All of the Heavenly Sword sect disciples stared at Sun Yulong with astonishment on their faces, and the third elder was enraged. However, he was now seriously considering whether he should accept the blue dream sword as its master or not. Sun Yulong didn't know, but he didn't regret his decision. Zhao Siming also heaved a forlorn sigh. Sun Yulong, do you still not understand? You've already been expelled from the sect by the third elder. If you accept the Blue Dream Sword as its master, you'll be making an enemy of the Heavenly Sword sect, and there will be no place for you in this world anymore. Almost everyone felt a bone-chilling power descend upon them. An ethereal voice sounded. It wasn't very loud, but it was imbued with a deafening power. Why is it me? After a long pause, he finally spoke. I'm not leaving. But if the Blue Dream Ancient Sword chooses me. Sun Yulur raised his head with a scorching expression. As a sword immortal, if I don't even try to seize an opportunity like this, how am I supposed to cultivate in the future? The sword projection continued to fall. Boom. An extremely proud and resolute sword intent soared into the sky. Sun Yulur, stop your idiotic actions. You don't deserve this ancient sword. Sun Yulur, you actually dared to let the Blue Dream Sword recognize you as its master. I'm going to kill you. You asked for it. Zhu Yunshan roared. Mistress Little Xie, please save me. Sun Yulua's hair stood on end as the little boy lay on him, and he was on the verge of tears. Sun Yulua took a deep breath. I know what I'm capable of, and I know that I'm not powerful enough to nurture an ancient sword spirit. Your strength isn't much, but you talk so much nonsense. What's going on? Sun Yulua asked in a tense voice. The forces of the Heavenly Sword sect were so terrifying, could he really escape successfully? Sun Yulua, I'll give you 10 seconds to hand over the Blue Dream Sword. Otherwise, I'll still take the ancient sword and expel you from the Heavenly Sword sect. Zhu Yunshan warned in a stern voice. The cloud turned into a giant sword that was thousands of feet long and fell from the sky. A carefree sword intent soared into the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds in the sky. As the third elder of the Sky Sword sect, he had no choice but to do this in order to bring back the ancient sword. Sun Yulua had finally become the master of the Blue Dream Sword. Little Xie clasped her hands behind her back and slowly made her way over to Sun Yulua. Right at this moment, the little girl in black appeared in front of him with her evil-slaying sword, and she slashed her sword through the air to pulverize Zhu Yunshan's sword projection. Little Xie told him the reason why the little boy had told her, and a smile appeared on her face. I respect the opinions of all sword spirits, so I'll agree to this wedding as long as you agree. Little son, if you don't have anywhere else to go, you can come to the 4-9 Immortal sect. The 4-9 Immortal sect isn't afraid of the Heavenly Sword sect anyway. If you come to our sect, we'll beat up anyone from the Heavenly Sword sect who dares to attack you. Just as Sun Yulua was hesitating, Ouyang Xia's enraged roar erupted from the sky above. No. I only want you 5 kilometers of frost, 50 kilometers of falling snow. A dejected expression appeared on the little boy's face upon hearing this. The refinement process was very quick. The cultivator riding atop the white horse drew his sword, and cloud and mist surged for over 50 kilometers. Little Xie slashed her evil-slaying sword toward Zhu Yunshan's chest. Sun Yulua's words reverberated throughout heaven and earth. Little Xie spoke in an indifferent voice before turning toward Zhao Siming and the others. The sword spirit had voluntarily chosen him as its master. This was something that he had never even dared to dream about. What kind of luck and fortune did he have to encounter to receive such a blessing? I'm no longer a member of the Heavenly Sword sect. This world is so vast, where should I go? The third elder is here. Sun Yulua's mouth gaped open and he fell into a daze. Just as Sun Yulua was rooted to the spot, a white mist sword projection fell from the sky. Sun Yulua, 10 seconds have passed. Sun Yulua, you're no longer a member of the Heavenly Sword sect. Piss off. After stowing away the Blue Dream Ancient Sword, what awaited him next was a relentless pursuit and escape. Zhu Yunshan was just about to charge towards Sun Yulua when a black figure appeared before him. After giving birth to a spirit, the ancient sword would only accept a new master after the death of the previous master. The two sword projections clashed, and Sun Yulua's sword projection was pulverized by the white mist sword projection. However, Enlin and Little Xie were like two massive mountains standing in their way, rendering them completely powerless to do anything. To their surprise, even though Little Xie was quite short and petite, her movements were extremely agile, and she instantly evaded Zhu Yunshan's sword projection before bringing her evil-slaying sword down. At the same time, Sun Yulua felt an extremely terrifying might enshrouding his entire body, as if he would be killed by that power if he did anything out of line. Little Xie's eyes narrowed into crescents as she smiled. "Save you? Why would you do that? Do you know what kind of situation you're in right now? Sun Yulua, if you dare to accept the Blue Dream Ancient Sword as its master, the Heavenly Sword Sect won't tolerate you anymore. He says he thinks you're very fun, so he's going to accept you as his master. It'll be very interesting in the future." The little boy grinned at him before sticking out his tongue and slurping it in Sun Yulua's face. Sun Yulua suddenly felt an empty space behind him, and the cool sensation suddenly disappeared. Sun Yulua immediately released his blood essence to refine the Blue Dream Ancient Sword. He turned around and was met by the little boy's sincere and innocent eyes. Before he had a chance to react, an ancient blue sword flew toward him while emitting a loud ringing sound. This is the Blue Dream Ancient Sword that the Heavenly Sword Sect has nurtured, a spirit that only appears once every 10,000 years. Now, he wants to, impudence. Little Xie swung her sword again, and an inky black sword projection instantly shattered the massive sword projection. Boom! At this moment, a cultivator riding atop a white horse with a single horn suddenly appeared in the distance. As he spoke, the endless white fog had already enveloped the surroundings of the temple from all directions, forming a trapping formation with nowhere to escape. Zhu Yunshan only wanted the ancient sword that had nurtured a spirit. He didn't care about Sun Yulua at all. Zhu Yunshan was a mighty figure at the pinnacle of the Return to Void intermediate stage of the Heavenly Sword Sect, and Enlin and Ouyang Xia were currently engaged in a fierce battle. If he took advantage of the situation, who would be able to stop him? Sun Yulua grabbed onto the cold, tender little hand on his shoulder with an earnest expression. "If you choose me, then I won't let you down. I'll do everything in my power to prove to you that I have the right to have you." Sun Yulua turned to the little boy behind him with a dumbstruck expression. All of the Heavenly Sword Sect cultivators were enraged upon seeing this. Sun Yulua's expression faltered slightly upon hearing this. The white mist sword projection was extremely fast, but Sun Yulua raised the sword in his hand and let loose an almighty roar as he unleashed an extremely dazzling sword projection into the sky. Sun Yulua's face was filled with sorrow and sorrow. All of the Heavenly Sword Sect disciples turned to the elders with scorching light in their eyes. Little Xie pointed at Sun Yulua as she spoke. Right at this moment, Enlin's voice sounded in the sky above. Chapter 1236. Tears welled up in Sun Yulua's eyes as he listened to Enlin's words. He had nowhere else to go, but his idol told him there was a place he could go. The 4-9 Immortal Sect could shelter him from the storm. "Sun Yulua, do you want to join the 4-9 Immortal Sect?" Enlin asked. Sun Yulua gripped his long sword tightly with excitement. "I do. I want to join the 4-9 Immortal Sect." He could tolerate being ostracized by the sect because he admired someone, and he could also endure the humiliation and fight to the death for the safety of the sect disciples. However, at the same time, he could choose a sect that he liked even when he was looked down upon and banished from the sect. "Very good. From this day forth, we're family." Enlin smiled. Sun Yulua felt like he was in a dream. Before he knew it, he had obtained the Blue Dream Ancient Sword, joined the 4-9 Immortal Sect, and become the family of his idol. "Are you happy?" The little boy's voice sounded from behind him. "I'm very surprised, but I'm also very happy." A warm smile appeared on Sun Yulua's face as he turned to the little boy lying on the ground behind him. The little boy smiled back at him, and his 2 eyeballs popped out of his eye sockets before rubbing against Sun Yuluo's face to find that they were smooth and cold. Ah! Sun Yuluo screamed with extreme horror on his face, and his eyes rolled into the back of his head as his legs gave out from under him, and he fell to the ground. He had almost lost his soul from fear. He. So fun. The little boy chuckled with elation. After catching his breath, Sun Yuluo had tears flowing down his face. What kind of B** had he accepted as his sword spirit? The battle in the sky was also drawing to a conclusion. Third Elder Zhu Yunshan had been ravaged by Little Xie, and his body was riddled with wounds. The first disciple of the Heavenly Sword sect, Ouyang Xia, had also been forced into retreat by Enlin and was clearly on the losing end. Damn it! Let's get out of here! Zhu Yunshan finally couldn't hold on any longer. Ouyang Xia's expression darkened, and he slashed aside the oncoming man with his sword before retreating in retreat. Enlin, remember this. The Blue Dream Ancient Sword belongs to our Heavenly Sword sect, so Sun Yuluo must die. This debt, my Heavenly Sword sect will get it back sooner or later. Enlin shrugged. If you're done with your pleasantries, Scram. Ouyang Xia's chest constricted with rage, and he glowered at Sun Yuluo before fleeing the scene. Zhao Siming and the others also took a meaningful glance at Enlin and Sun Yuluo before flying into the distance. Thus, Sun Yuluo became the sworn enemy of their sect. This made them feel extremely complicated. The image of Sun Yuluo risking his life to battle the crimson humanoid figure in order to save them at the Flower Slaughter formation lingered in his mind. They were still thinking that perhaps after returning to the sect, their relationship with each other could be further improved. Who would have thought that in such a short time, they would become enemies of different sects? What a cruel twist of fate. Enlin flew back to the ground and stretched his body. Phew! That was a very satisfying battle. Ouyang Xia is a very good training partner. An expression of reverence appeared on Sun Yuluo's face. Sword Immortal Enlin, Ouyang Xia is one of the most powerful sword immortals in our sect, and he is also the disciple that sect leader Lu Mingxian is most proud of. I didn't think that he would only be worthy of being your training partner. Enlin replied with an indifferent expression. It is his honor to be able to train with me. Sun Yuluo was struck by a sense of deep veneration upon hearing this. As expected of the person he admired, he was indeed domineering. I'm sorry, Sword Immortal Enlin, I've caused you so much trouble. An apologetic expression appeared on Sun Yuluo's face. I obtained the Blue Dream Ancient Sword and benefited immensely, but in the end, I still have to rely on you to deal with the Heavenly Sword sect. Why are you so good to me? Enlin patted Sun Yuluo's shoulder. Don't think too much about it. I don't care what happens to the Heavenly Sword sect. I'm treating you so well because I like you. Like me? Sun Yuluo was a little perplexed. He had exceptional aptitude, and was once the disciple of the Heavenly Sword sect's sect leader, but the 4-9 Immortal sect had no shortage of supremely talented prodigies. Enlin nodded in affirmation. No matter how much the sect rejects him or how much the disciples look down on him, he's still willing to shed blood for his fellow sect members in times of need. Who wouldn't like him? So that's the reason. Sun Yuluo stared blankly at Enlin as countless thoughts surged through his mind. Enlin smiled. Aside from that, you have many other good qualities. Don't look down on yourself, I have high hopes for you. Good luck. Tears welled up in Sun Yuluo's eyes, and he nodded heavily. Yes, sect leader Enlin. I won't let you down. Thus, the three of them rose into the air and embarked on their return journey. The 2 sword spirits seemed to be quite fond of the Dead Spirit Demonic Lands environment, and they would come out for a stroll from time to time. Little Xie was in a very good mood after obtaining a new underling, and she began to hum a delightful tune as she sat on Dabai's head. Her voice was immature, but it was very clear, and the melody was also very moving. Enlin listened with relish. A little boy was lying on Sun Yuluo's back, and he was also humming a song. Red blood stains the wall red, a little human head rolled under the bed. This was a peculiar melody and terrifying lyrics. Sun Yulua screamed with his hands over his ears as tears flowed from his eyes. Why was there such a huge disparity between the two of them? He was about to have a mental breakdown. Little Xie sang so well. Anlin praised with elation, and he couldn't help but pinch little Xie's soft little cheeks, drawing a disdainful look from little Xie. However, the disdainful look on her face was also extremely adorable. The little boy also finished his song, and he lay on Sun Yulua's back before planting a deep kiss on him. Did I sing well? Can you stop singing? Sun Yulua was so scared that he couldn't even speak properly. Sure. The little boy smiled before extending his long tongue around Sun Yulua's neck. Sun Yulua's eyes rolled over into the back of his head, and he fainted. A second before he fainted, he was still sighing with emotion. As far as sword spirits were concerned, everyone had their own unique circumstances. Anlin and he were in heaven, while Anlin was in hell. After scaring Sun Yulua unconscious, the little boy was a little bored, and he reverted back to his ancient blue sword form before lying silently on Sun Yulua's back. At the same time, he also released his Yin energy to nurture Sun Yulua's meridians. This was a good thing. However, the Yin energy seemed to have some side effect. Sun Yulua was having nightmares, and even though he was unconscious, tears were flowing from the corners of his eyes. From time to time, he would scream and yell, "No, no! Poor little son, woof!" Dabai was feeling a little distressed. How did they end up together? Anlin was also quite mystified by this. Little Xie glanced at Anlin before speaking in an indifferent voice, "This is fate." Chapter 12:37. Anlin rode on Dabai's back and quickly returned to the sect. He immediately gathered all of the core members of the sect for a meeting upon his return. Ahem, allow me to introduce Sun Yulua, a new member of our 4-9 Immortal sect. We plan to have him join the Sword Pavilion, so please give him a round of applause. Hua hua hua. Pa pa pa. Anlin's voice had only just fallen when raucous applause erupted from within the sect. A bright light flashed through Lu Qianhuan's purple eyes. "Brother Sun Yulua, my God, you're here." Sun Yulua was also very elated. "Sister Lu Qianhuan, we're going to be in the same sect from now on. This really is fate." Lu Qianhuan spoke with a serious expression. "Please refer to me as Pavilion Leader." Sun Yulua. Pavilion Leader. Bai Ling was speechless. Anlin always brings people back with him every time he goes out. What a habit! Tang Shimin hunched his shoulders with a fearful expression. "That's not important. I'm more concerned about what that thing behind Sun Yulua is." Behind Sun Yulua, a dark blue frosty aura seemed to be able to engulf the surrounding light. A little boy had his hands on his shoulders, and his chin was resting on his shoulders as he cracked a sinister smile at everyone. This scene caused everyone to involuntarily suck in a mouthful of cold air. Yiling was so scared that she hid under a chair as she trembled uncontrollably. "Oh, I forgot to introduce him. That little boy is the sword spirit of the Blue Dream sword that Sun Yulua refined," Anlin introduced. Everyone was astonished. What kind of sword spirit was that? "We're not well educated, please don't lie to us." Just as everyone was in shock, the little boy suddenly stuck out his long pink tongue before flicking it toward the side of Sun Yulua's face. Holy sh*t. Save me! Sun Yulua screamed as he almost suffocated. Everyone! A master like this had tamed a sword spirit like this? How terrifying! Immediately afterward, Anlin explained why he wanted to recruit Sun Yulua, as well as his conflict with the Heavenly Sword sect. Lu Qianhuan stroked her chin as she analyzed the situation. "My father places great importance on the cultivation of talented sword immortals, and he places even greater importance on the sword spirits that have been nurtured. He views them as a symbol of the sect, as well as a spiritual guide. In his heart, An ancient sword that had successfully nurtured a spirit was even more important than a return to void final stage mighty figure who had attained the power of the divine Tao. So, according to my understanding of him, I'm afraid he won't let this matter rest. Lu Qianhuan analyzed the situation. Everyone's expression turned solemn. Sun Yulua was both concerned and guilty, and he clenched his fists in self-reproach. Enlin's expression was extremely relaxed. Don't worry, there's nothing to be afraid of. In the sect, we have the 99 levels Extreme Sect Protective Array. It won't be long before our sect obtains the Starfire battleship, and we'll be able to battle even Tao Integration Stage Super Mighty Figures. What is there to be afraid of? A smile appeared on Bai Ling's face upon hearing this. The Starfire battleship should be fully repaired in less than half a year. When everyone heard these words, their expressions finally relaxed a lot. The conference concluded. Enlin sat down under the willow tree and organized the items in his storage ring. He was still missing 3 dark beads. Using Huang Fuwen as a reference, there were 2 return to void initial stage beads, and they were all located in the same place, the Abyss of Evil. What a familiar place! A reminiscent expression appeared on Enlin's face. Thinking back, he had slain sinister devils there once, in the southeastern region of the Kingdom of the Nine State, at the border of the Heavenly River State. An inky black, gargantuan fissure extended for an infinitely long distance appeared on the ground, separating the human territory from the ant tribe territory like a natural chasm. Enlin descended from the sky on dog kinesis flight and descended into the gigantic abyss that engulfed all light. One of the dark beads is located in the Dark Soul Lake in the Abyss of Evil, while the other is located in the body of an extremely powerful sinister devil. Both of them are located at the very depths of the Abyss of Evil. Enlin took a glance at the map and had a rough idea of how difficult it was to find them. When he first entered the Abyss of Evil, he had only made it to the central region. That region was filled with spirit-nurturing stage mighty figures and soul formation stage mighty figures. The sinister devil's power system was different from that of the outside world. However, sinister devils that were comparable to soul formation stage mighty figures could already speak and possess intelligence. This was the case with the sinister devil boss that Enlin had encountered last time. As for more powerful sinister devils, he had yet to see one. It's getting darker and darker. Dabai wagged his snowy white tail as he descended from the sky. I should have brought Big Brother Cho along. His eyes could act as super searchlights, and it should be a lot more comfortable. Woof! Xiao Cho is currently enjoying his newlywed life, so I won't disturb him for now. Enlin was quite open-minded, and there was a hint of envy in his voice. Little Xie seemed to prefer dark environments as well, and she soon jumped out from the evil-slaying sword on Enlin's back before sitting on Dabai's back. She grabbed onto Enlin's sleeve with her slender hands as she surveyed their surroundings with an intrigued expression. The mutant beasts that resided in the Abyss of Evil pounced toward Dabai from time to time. However, they didn't even get within 1,000 feet of Dabai before they were instantly shredded to death by the silvery white winds. Haha, I've returned as a powerful being. I'll slay anyone who dares to stand in my way. Dabai was very excited. It could be said that he was virtually invincible here. Dabai was as nervous and fearful as he had been in the Abyss of Evil as he had been in a sorry state during his escape. Now that he was here, he felt as invincible as ever. Soon, they had descended for tens of thousands of meters before discovering a flat area at the very bottom of the abyss. After we find a flat area, we'll find a massive crack in the ground. If we continue down there, we'll be able to reach the central region of the Abyss of Evil, Enlin instructed. As they spoke, Dabai suddenly blasted an air cannon into the distance, which reduced a centipede monster up ahead to mincemeat. To them, the front part of the Abyss of Evil was like a park. No living being could survive a single attack from Dabai. 4 hours later, they finally discovered a massive crack. We can reach the central region of the abyss of evil from here. Let's go. A hint of anticipation appeared on Enlin's face. He descended on Debai's back and descended through the inky black crack. Thus, the sunlight in the sky was completely obscured, and the surrounding space was plunged into pure darkness. At the same time, in the deepest part of the abyss of evil, a dreamy, inky black figure opened its eyes, which were as bright as the stars in the night sky. Another powerful living being has visited my abyss. Even though its cultivation base is very low, the energy within its body is extraordinarily powerful. Interesting, huh? The blood within my body is also throbbing. Could it be the bearer of the Tianming Tao? The figure suddenly became excited. Chapter 12:38. Enlin continued downward on Debai's back. Their surroundings were extremely dark, so they could only use their divine sense to scout ahead. Phew! What a comfortable feeling! Little Xie narrowed her eyes with a hint of enjoyment in her eyes. So little Xie likes dark places? Enlin was also very excited as he recalled her performance in the Dead Spirit Demonic Land. If there was one thing that the Dead Spirit Demonic Land and the Abyss of Evil had in common, it would most likely be darkness. Little Xie thought to herself for a moment before replying, "I'm sure I don't like dark places. But I'm not sure what I like either. Perhaps I like the sinister and treacherous atmosphere, as well as the indiscernible energy drifting through space?" Just as they were speaking, a dark shadow suddenly leaped out of the darkness before pouncing toward Enlin at an extremely fast speed. Its sharp claws tore through the air in a lethal trajectory. It was a sinister devil. Before Debai even had a chance to attack, little Xie gripped her evil-slaying sword and stabbed it toward the sinister devil at an even faster speed, instantly puncturing its chest. Gasp! The sinister devil let loose a blood-curdling cry as its body quickly crumbled. A peculiar energy suddenly appeared before latching onto the evil-slaying sword and being slowly absorbed by it. A flush appeared on little Xie's face, and her eyes glowed with excitement. "I want more," she spoke with excitement. Enlin was surprised. "Little Xie, you can increase your power by killing sinister devils?" Little Xie stroked the blade of her sword with a faint smile. "This is a new discovery after nurturing a spirit. I think I know how to upgrade it to a divine tool now." After that, little Xie transformed into a god of slaughter in the abyss of evil. Boom, boom, boom. Sword intent tore through the entire space. An adorable little girl wielding a black sword unleashed a devastating slaughter. All mutant beasts and sinister devils howled with anguish. Enlin rode on Debai's back in a carefree manner, and all of the hostile living beings he encountered were slain by little Xie with a single sword strike. All living beings in her wake fell to their knees. This trip to the abyss of evil has suddenly become so easy, woof, Debai said. Enlin chewed on a spirit fruit as he roamed through the darkness with a smile on his face. Little Xie is so awesome. She's like a tyrant in this place. Little Xie stood on the head of a demonic dragon and severed its head before turning to Enlin with a cold expression. "Female overlord? This title is too unpleasant. Please call me your majesty." Enlin, didn't it feel weird to call a cute little girl queen? Suddenly, he remembered the little girl who put the crown on his head. It doesn't seem so out of place. Instead, it's quite natural. In the central region of the abyss of evil, evil demons were appearing more frequently, and there were also all kinds of ferocious and cruel exotic beasts roaming about. Enlin didn't make a single move along the way. No matter how terrifying the mutant beasts and sinister devils were, little Xie could take care of them. "I'm so envious of Big Brotherin. Even his sword can move on its own, and he's so powerful. Let's stroll through this perilous realm like we're strolling through a garden, woof." Debai sighed with emotion as he looked at little Xie floating in the air. Little Xie's power is second only to mine, to be honest. None of the trash sinister devils around us are a match for her. They're all just delivering themselves to her. Enlin chuckled. His trip to the abyss of evil was simply too comfortable. Riding on Dabai's back, he didn't even have to move his feet. Little Xie paved the way, he didn't have to do anything. She really was like a master. Awesome. A thought suddenly occurred to Enlin. Was this what it felt like to farm monsters? It was a very peculiar feeling. Little Xie wasn't interested in any of the treasures they encountered along the way, so Enlin took all of them and rewarded Dabai with a spirit fruit or two from time to time. Everyone was happy and elated. The central region of the Abyss of Evil was filled with twists and turns, but Enlin and the others were not slow at all. Little Xie slashed through all of the sinister devils, evil spirits, and ferocious beasts with a single sword strike. Poison miasma, slaughter formations, and illusionary formations were all unable to withstand a single sword strike from Little Xie. 20 hours later, within an indistinct spatial rift, all of the sinister devil-powerful beings were trembling uncontrollably within. They were all powerful beings in the central region of the Abyss of Evil, and all of them possessed power comparable to that of a soul formation stage powerful being. Gasp! That's way too terrifying. Just who is that little girl? The resentful Poison King didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before he was slain by that little girl. Thank God you notified us in time. Otherwise, I really would have followed the scent of dog meat to find them. We're no match for them. Let's lay low for now. They seem to be heading toward Master Dark Demon's territory. Haha, that's suicide. Master Dark Demon is the Emperor of the Abyss of Evil. If they go there, they'll still be crushed to death by Master Dark Demon. They'll pay the price for their arrogance and ignorance. Let's follow them and see what happens to them. Let's go together in a place where countless wandering souls wandered. This place was filled with ghostly wails and demonic howls, filled with endless negative emotions. Darkness, depravity, violence, bloodshed, pain, despair. A sinister devil with a wingspan of over 100 meters and a substantial, twisted body covered in layers of black armor had a sinister expression on its face as it stared straight ahead with a pair of dark blue eyes. Roar! It let loose an almighty roar. The space around it was sealed, and demonic energy swept forth like waves. Those with weak minds would instantly go insane. I am the Dark Demon, the Emperor of the sinister devils in the Abyss of Evil. You dare to trespass on my territory? Die. It slashed its claws through the air as it spoke. An inky black blade projection imbued with the power of depravity flashed through the air like lightning, and the space around it crumbled as countless ghosts wailed and howled. All of the nearby rock formations were strangely corroded into twisted objects. It was also in that instant that a little girl charged toward it with a black sword in her hand. Evil sword technique, soul destruction. Light flashed from the evil-slaying sword, and the dark demon's claws were instantly pulverized. What? An expression of shock and horror appeared on the dark demon's face. However, before it could react, the sword slash, which could not be seen clearly, had already landed on its body, slicing through it without any obstruction. The lake behind it was sliced in half, and a bottomless fissure was carved into the cliff face. There was nothing that could block this sword slash. Little Xie slowly sheathed her sword before standing in front of the dark demon with a cold voice. Who dares to call themselves emperors? The dark demon finally let loose a wail of anguish, and its body expanded before exploding violently. Boundless black energy began to flow into the evil-slaying sword. Little Xie's cheeks became even more flushed, as if she had become drunk. Even though it's not very powerful, there's a lot of it and it's also very pure. Sinister devils of this level are quite good. Enlin, I want more. Little Xie's eyes were a little glazed over as she looked at Enlin. Enlin pinched Little Xie's round cheeks with a dark expression. Do you think return to Void Stage sinister devils are Dabai's food? You want them just like that? Let's just leave it to fate. We'll just have to explore this place more often. Enlin and Little Xie continued onward. Within the shadowy space, all of the sinister devils had been scared witless. The most powerful dark demon, the emperor of all sinister devils, had been insta-killed by a little girl with a single sword strike. What had just happened was completely unimaginable to the sinister devils. The massive disparity in power struck them with an indescribable sense of horror for the first time. What kind of being has entered this place? It's too terrifying, too terrifying. They just said they wanted to explore this place more often. Holy F***ck. What are we still standing here for? Run. The demons were so frightened that they scattered and fled in all directions. Chapter 1239. Unlin and Little Xie didn't have to travel very far before they arrived at a strange cave. The cave was situated beside a lake not far away from the dark demon territory. It had a diameter of around 100 feet, and it was impossible to see how deep it was. An aura of darkness and depravity emanated from within, as if it were the gate to hell. I just used my divine sense to investigate the cave. It's over 30,000 meters deep. My divine sense is unable to ascertain its exact depth. Unlin spoke with a grave expression. Could this be a passageway that leads to the deepest part of the abyss of evil? Woof. Dabai speculated. Little Xie made her way over excitedly. Let's go. There must be a lot of sinister devils in there. Unlin was a little speechless as he looked at Little Xie with concern in his heart. This little girl seemed to be addicted to slaying sinister devils. What if she wanted to stay here and didn't want to go back? Let's go. Little Xie leaped into the cave first. Hurry, Dabai, Unlin urged. Dabai looked on at Little Xie's departing figure, and he immediately activated his jet flying dog mode to catch up to Little Xie at an extremely fast speed. Everyone descended at a rapid pace. The space around them was dark and deathly silent. There was no light, no sound, no life, no end. For some reason, Unlin felt as if he were about to disappear into the boundless darkness of this world. This continued until Dabai couldn't help but sneeze. Achoo! The sound of his sneeze reverberated through the cave and traveled infinitely far. Holy sh**t, this is way too deep. Just where am I supposed to go? Woof. Dabai grumbled with his tongue out. We've already descended for 50,000 meters, but we still can't see the end. It really is quite deep, Unlin couldn't help but comment. The bottom of the abyss of evil appeared to be even deeper than they had imagined. After descending for another 50,000 meters, they finally discovered an exit. Little Xie was already waiting for them at the exit. Phew! It's so big outside. Woof! Dabai exclaimed in surprise as he emerged from the cave. Unlin ignited the great holy flame in his hand, and a dazzling light illuminated an area with a radius of over 10,000 feet. There were no more rock walls to be seen, only the uneven ground and an extremely vast space. This place is like an underground mezzanine. Unlin was also a little astonished by what he saw. He had thought that the underground would be narrow, but the abyss of evil's bottom was so vast. He had thought that the underground would be small, but the bottom of the abyss of evil was so vast. Unlin didn't have any objections. The Dark Soul Lake and extremely powerful sinister devils that he was looking for weren't marked on the map, so he could only rely on luck. Wait for me, Wolf, Dabai suddenly said. Unlin turned and saw Dabai. Wolf, holy run, Dabai said. Dabai Xiao Xie Bei Bei's face. Holy F***ck. Dabai, you've gone too far. Unlin turned pale with fright. I don't do that. Why don't you make a toilet for me, Wolf? Dabai rolled his eyes. Besides, my pee is no normal pee. It's a locator pheromone. Dabai continued. Unlin was confused. Locator pheromone? That's right. My sense of smell is extremely sensitive to the liquid that I excrete. It can transform into a special type of information that allows me to accurately smell its location from over 500 kilometers away. Woof, Dabai said proudly. Unlin was astonished. You can smell where you pee from over 500 kilometers away? That's bad *SS. That's a good way to prevent getting lost, little Xie said with a serious expression. Dabai chortled with glee. That's right. This place is so big and so dark. I won't forget my way back if I pee, woof. Unlin's lips twitched, but he didn't know what to say. There was no one else who could be so righteous and proud after taking a piss on the ground. Dabai's urine began to seep into the ground, forming some kind of special ripple. Dabai took a deep breath, and an intoxicated expression appeared on his face. After a while, he nodded with satisfaction. It's done, let's go, woof. Unlin continued onward in the direction that little Xie was pointing. Not long after that. Hiss hiss hiss, the sound of metal grinding against metal suddenly erupted. 3 black figures pounced toward Unlin and the others at the same time, and their terrifying auras compressed the air around them. Little Xie instantly slashed an inky black sword projection through the air with her evil slaying sword. She was so fast that even Unlin was unable to follow her with his eyes. In the next instant, the 3 black figures that were pouncing toward them all exploded, insta-killing 3 soul formation stage sinister devils with 1 sword strike. Impressive. Off to the side, Unlin applauded with an expression of approval. Little Xie absorbed the sinister devil's energy and continued onward. After traveling for over 50 kilometers, they arrived at a place where a viscous substance was hovering in the air, as if the air had been filled with a filthy, jelly-like liquid. An inky black figure opened its crimson eyes before slowly pulling out a huge sword from its back. Boom! A terrifying aura swept forth like a tsunami. The humanoid sinister devil made its way toward Unlin and the others. The projection of a violent black lizard dragon appeared behind it, and its sinister devil aura combined with the aura of the Western Dragon tribe swept toward Unlin and the others at the same time. I am the evil Dragon Lord, and I rule over billions. The sinister devil didn't even get a chance to finish its sentence before little Xie charged toward it and slashed down with her evil-slaying sword. Evil sword technique, soul destruction. The blade of the sword pierced through the air, leaving a trail of lightning in its wake. The humanoid sinister devil's expression shifted drastically in that instant, and it slashed through the air at an extremely fast speed. A resounding boom erupted, and the space within a radius of over 1,000 feet crumbled. The sinister devil hurtled back for over 1 kilometer, and its hands trembled as an extremely obvious crack appeared on its huge sword. Its expression became extremely grave. What a terrifying sword strike! Who the hell are you? To think that it was able to block little Xie's sword strike. This guy is a lot more powerful than the Dark Demon Emperor. Unlin looked on with intrigue. Little Xie didn't reply to the evil Dragon Lord's question. Instead, she used her movement techniques to close in on it again. Insolent fool! The evil Dragon Lord flared up with rage, and it slashed its sword through the air like the roar of a heavenly dragon. The sword projection materialized into a black dragon, and the space in its wake was polluted and viscous. Little Xie didn't take evasive measures. Instead, she wielded her sword with both hands, and at the same time, a divine symbol appeared on the blade of her sword, transforming it into the purest darkness. Unlin could only see boundless darkness as he looked into the distance. Evil sword technique, Royal Divine Monarch. An extremely domineering sword intense soared into the sky, as if it were a divine monarch himself. Her petite body stomped the ground violently, and the recoil created a crater that resembled a meteorite crater. In the blink of an eye, the evil Dragon Lord's black dragon sword strike was sliced in half. Little Xie had already appeared behind the evil Dragon Lord, and she knelt down on one knee while maintaining a sword strike stance with both hands. Behind her, the evil Dragon Lord howled with grief as its body was sliced in half. Chapter 1240. After being sliced in half, the evil Dragon Lord's body was still writhing on the ground as it wailed with anguish. This evil Dragon Lord was quite powerful to be able to withstand 2 of little Xie's sword strikes. In contrast, Unlin was struck by a sense of inferiority after witnessing Little Xia's sword techniques. As his sword spirit, why did he feel like Little Xia's combat prowess was even more bad *SS than his own? If this continued, he was going to be completely humiliated. Was he going to have to suck up to a little girl in the future? How was that supposed to be? How was that supposed to be? Little Xia, stop! Unlin immediately yelled at the sight of Little Xia raising her evil-slaying sword. Little Xia's body faltered slightly, and she cocked her little head to the side as she blinked with confusion in her eyes. I have something to ask this evil dragon lord, Unlin explained. Oh, then hurry up, Little Xia replied in an indifferent voice as she lowered her sword. She was still waiting to absorb this sinister devil's energy. It had to be delicious. Unlin rode Dabai over to the evil dragon lord and looked down at the two balls of inky black objects on the ground. Let me ask you, who is the most powerful being here, and where is it? One of the dark beads was in the hands of a super powerful being among the sinister devils. It was most likely the most powerful being in the abyss of evil. The evil dragon lord was extremely powerful, and it had already reached the pinnacle of the sinister devils, so it should know that being. The two writhing black objects abruptly faltered before bursting into raucous laughter, as if they had heard something unbelievable. Ha ha! You want to find our king? Did I hear that right? You want to fight him? What an idiot who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you think you can defeat our king just because you've defeated me? You're too arrogant and ignorant. I don't mind telling you. You're going to die if you go there anyway. The evil dragon lord pointed in a certain direction. Keep going in that direction and you'll see a green lake. Keep going in the direction that the tip of the lake is pointing to, and that's where our king is. Unlin was completely dumbstruck by the evil dragon lord's words. Why was this B** so cooperative? He had wanted to torture him, but he didn't expect him to tell him the king's location so readily. If the king it spoke of knew how it cooperated with the enemy, what would he think? I really want to see you being tortured to death by your king. Your expressions of remorse and despair will definitely be very beautiful. The evil dragon lord wriggled its body with anticipation in its eyes. Is that so? No matter what the result is, you won't be able to see it, Unlin said indifferently. Little Xia, do it. As soon as his voice fell, an inky black sword projection engulfed the evil dragon lord's body. Little Xia carefully sampled the sinister devil's energy, and her eyes became darker and darker. Her aura also swelled explosively, becoming extremely powerful. Little Xia, aren't you becoming more powerful a little too quickly? Unlin was a little surprised. Can your body handle it? Will it explode like a balloon? A faint smile appeared on Little Xia's face as she raised her proud head. Become stronger? Foolish master, who told you that my original strength was my true strength? My original power was like a dried-up river. Even though I had a body that could accommodate hundreds of rivers, the remaining energy within my body was extremely sparse. Now, these sinister devils have unexpectedly transformed into fresh water to nourish my body and revitalize my river. In other words, I'm not becoming more powerful. Instead, I'm recovering my original power. Little Xia explained with a proud expression, not forgetting to shoot a disdainful glance at Unlin. She had fought with Unlin for the first time, during which she had nurtured her spirit, and she had been humiliated by Unlin. She had never forgotten that. When her power was almost fully recovered, Little Xia was going to show him what a true sword spirit was like. Unlin didn't know about Little Xia's complicated thoughts, and he asked with a curious expression, "How much longer do you need to recover your power? Will you be able to break through to the divine tool level after that?" Little Xia was in a good mood, and she replied with a smile, "I've already recovered half of my power. I should be able to break through to the divine tool level after I completely recover my power." Unlin was very elated. If little Xie could break through to the divine tool level, then he would be able to progress to the return to void stage even more quickly. At the very least, he would be able to progress to the return to void stage before he graduated. By the way, little Xie, your evil sword techniques seem to be very powerful. Can you teach me? And Lin stroked little Xie's head with a warm smile on his face. Little Xie swatted An Lin's hand away with a disdainful expression. I can't teach you. Techniques are easy to teach, but true intent is very difficult to teach. Only after I progress to the divine tool level and inject my powerful divine intent into you will you be able to completely inherit my technique. An Lin ignored the disdain in little Xie's voice and was extremely elated to hear this. He didn't want to cultivate techniques in earnest. He preferred to inject techniques into his mind. Wasn't that how the system worked? He was extremely elated that little Xie knew how to do this. Useless. Little Xie pursed her lips and harumphed before continuing onward. She was heading in the direction that the evil Dragon Lord was pointing. She was going to meet the king that the evil Dragon Lord was referring to. An Lin had no objections. He suspected that this king was most likely the owner of the dark bead. The three of them continued onward for a while, and sure enough, a green lake appeared before them. This green color was due to the peculiar energy imbued within the water. An Lin hadn't even come into contact with the water, but he could already sense that the water was imbued with powerful poison and negative energy. The tip of the lake is in that direction. Little Xie pointed up ahead. This lake was like a green teardrop, and the tip of the teardrop was pointing toward the direction where the king was located. However, little Xie didn't even get a chance to move before An Lin latched onto her hand. Little Xie raised an eyebrow. What is it? I can sense a spiritual power from this lake, An Lin said with excitement. What about it? Little Xie was perplexed. The other dark bead exists within the dark soul lake. The Yin energy here is abundant, and there's also a spiritual power here. Isn't that a symbol of the dark soul lake? There's a dark bead at the bottom of the lake that I want. An Lin was elated. He had been searching high and low for it, only to stumble upon it by chance. This discovery was a pleasant surprise. Wait for me up here. I'll be back soon. An Lin dove headfirst into the lake as he spoke. Dabai recoiled upon seeing this. This lake is so terrifying. Is Big Brother and going to be alright? I feel like I'll be melted into nothingness if I dive in. Woof. Little Xie shot a glance at Dabai. Don't worry about the lion, little puppy. Your worries are completely unfounded. This lake can drown little puppies, but it won't drown a lion. Dabai. Not only was little Xie very powerful at slashing people, but she was also very terrifying at stabbing people's hearts. Just as Dabai was sighing with emotion, little Xie was already scribbling on the ground with her sword in hand. What are you doing? Dabai asked. An Lin has dove into the lake, and a battle could erupt soon. I'm setting up a spell formation as a precaution so that I can help An Lin in time, little Xie replied. Dabai was enlightened upon hearing this, and he sighed with emotion. Even though little Xie had a vicious tongue and a violent personality, she was still quite considerate of Big Brother, and thinking of this, little Xie became even more adorable. Chapter 1241. An Lin dove into the lake water and continued to dive. The frosty and corrosive power of the lake water posed no threat to him, as it was completely kept at bay by his vital energy barrier. The lake water glowed faintly, and the light seemed to be coming from the bottom. Thus, An Lin continued toward the source of the light. After diving for over a kilometer, the cries of ghosts and monsters erupted from around him, and they were imbued with negative emotions such as pain, despair, and depravity. At the same time, a power that threatened to freeze An Lin's consciousness began to corrode his body. An Lin harumphed coldly, and the peerlessly powerful power of his consciousness instantly proliferated outward, dispelling the power that could affect his soul in an extremely brutal manner. Thus, he made his way to the bottom of the lake water. There was a platform at the center of the lake water, upon which lay a green bead. The bead exuded a very special power, and it was slowly changing the nature of the lake water. Divine Inspection Technique. Sky Sealing Dark King Bead. Collect the 9 dark beads scattered by the Dark King to obtain the true inheritance of the Sky Sealing Dark King from the Dark King Palace. A smile instantly appeared on Enlin's face upon receiving this information. He had obtained the 7th dark bead. An extremely intricate spell formation had been set up around the dark bead, and normal return to void stage mighty figures would not be able to break through it. However, Enlin had the divine inspection technique, so it was a piece of cake for him. Boom! Enlin flicked a finger, and the spell formation was shattered, and the entire lake water began to churn in that instant. Little Xie and Dabai knew that Enlin was finally going to stir up trouble upon seeing this. It was also at this moment that an enraged roar erupted in the distance. "Who dares to target my bathhouse?" Boom, 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 terrifying shockwaves swept forth. A man in a green robe made his way over slowly, but he was actually quite fast. His figure was tall and slender, and his angular face was rather handsome. His pair of pitch-black eyes flashed with a dark green sharpness, and he was extremely fierce. What was most eye-catching about him was that his hands were twisted and inky black, and any movement he made would cause the space around him to tremble and screech. "Who are you?" "Woof!" Dabai saw who it was and immediately cried out in alarm. "Who am I?" The man raised his head and sneered. "I'm the king of fiends, Dong Yang." Dabai stared at the man in front of him in shock. "You're the king of demons? That's impossible, you're clearly a human, woof. Weren't malevolent demons all pitch-black, twisted, and crazed? How could they possibly be like the man before him, who was polite and exuded the aura of a human?" Dong Yang glanced at Dabai indifferently as if he couldn't be bothered to explain himself. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the green lake and roared furiously, "How dare you set your sights on my bathhouse? Die!" Dabai stared blankly at Dong Yang. Bathing in this horrifying and disgusting lake water? This man was indeed not human. Dong Yang stepped forward, and his body quickly flashed toward the lake. Right at this moment, countless inky black sword projections imbued with the power of annihilation swept toward Dong Yang. The sword formation that little Xie had set up was finally activated. "You want to stop me? Then I'll die with you." Dong Yang extended his twisted, inky black hands, which were like the most resolute weapons, as he thrust them toward the sword projections. Boom, boom, boom. Energy exploded, and the sword projections that were powerful enough to tear apart return to void stage sinister devils were shattered by his hands. Dong Yang was like a human tank as he crashed into Little Xie's sword formation. Little Xie's eyes lit up. This opponent was very powerful, and he was the enemy she was looking for. She immediately slashed her evil-slaying sword toward Dong Yang without any hesitation. "Piss off!" Dong Yang slapped an impatient palm toward Little Xie, and his twisted, inky black hands imbued with the power of annihilation erupted forth like the roar of a dragon, instantly annihilating return-to-void stage enemies into nothingness. However, to his surprise, an inky black sword projection tore through his palm in an extremely domineering manner before striking his twisted, inky black hands. A sense of tearing swept forth along with the terrifying sharpness of the sword projection. "Don't underestimate me. I'm the king of the entire abyss of evil." Dong Yang roared with rage as a green light erupted from his eyes. An aura of depravity and annihilation converged in his hands before crashing toward the inky black sword projection. Boom! Energy exploded forth. Little Xie's petite body was knocked flying for several hundred meters. Dong Yang stood rooted to the spot as he looked at the excited little girl in the distance. His hands trembled slightly as waves of shock surged through his heart. That move just now was an attack that he had used his origin power. However, the little girl before him had only been knocked flying, and she hadn't even sustained any visible injuries. "Who the hell are you?" Little Xie was far too powerful, and Dong Yang had no choice but to take her seriously. His voice had only just fallen when a massive splash erupted over the surface of the green lake. Unlin appeared on the surface of the lake with an elated expression on his face. The seventh dark bead is finally here. Who are you? Dong Yang glowered at Unlin with an enraged expression. I'm the king of sinister devils, Dong Yang. How dare you steal my dark bead? Hand it over right now, and I'll give you a quick and painless death. Unlin wasn't enraged by this. Instead, his eyes lit up. So you're the king of sinister devils. Does that mean you have another dark bead? Dong Yang's hair stood on end with rage, and it was as if flames of fury were about to erupt from his eyes. Yes, I do. What? You're trying to take it away from me? What an ignorant and overconfident bastard. I've changed my mind. I'm going to extract your consciousness and torture it for tens of millions of years. I'm not taking it away. This dark bead belongs to the Sky Sealing Dark King anyway. I just want to return it to its rightful owner. Unlin spoke with a fearless smile on his face. Naturally, he wouldn't be so courteous when dealing with ordinary evil spirits and demonic creatures that contained boundless negative emotions. He would just attack them directly. However, this king of sinister devils, Dong Yang, was simply too much like a human, so Unlin had to say a few more words. Return it to its rightful owner, my A*S. This thing belongs to me, so it belongs to me. Dong Yang roared as a pair of twisted black wings over 1,000 feet long suddenly extended from his back. The black wings flapped, and destructive evil winds swept forth for several dozen kilometers. Dabai had unleashed his life-saving treasures in this dire situation, but he was still knocked flying by the shockwaves from the black wings. Unlin clenched his fists with a smile on his face. I like it when you're a bad-tempered bro like me. It's even more fun when I beat you up like this. Dong Yang's body bulged, and a dark green divine light erupted from the surface of his skin. Heaven and earth instantly transformed. The ground was stained with blood, and a series of twisted and sinister faces appeared overhead, all of which were glaring at Unlin with resentment and anguish. Countless blood-curdling cries erupted in the air. Unlin felt as if his consciousness was being assaulted and polluted by this environment. This was a very peculiar power. This was the power of the divine Tao unique to sinister devils. Unlin rubbed his palms together and prepared to attack. However, Little Xie stood in front of Unlin with a scorching light in her eyes. Stand off to the side. Dong Yang is my prey. Chapter 1242. Unlin was just about to rise up when Little Xie barked at him with a cold voice. His master didn't want to hack away, but the sword spirit forced him to. Be careful. This sinister devil is not to be underestimated, Unlin cautioned. Don't worry, I'm more powerful than you. If even I can't handle it, then it's all over for you, Little Xie said with a serious expression on her face. Unlin, even though he was the one being protected, he was still a little displeased. The sleeves on Dong Yang's arms began to explode, and dark green energy flowed through his arms, materializing a series of special patterns that were branded onto his arms like tattoos, all of which were emanating bursts of divine light. Eat my fist. Dong Yang charged toward Little Xie, and his fist descended with an extremely terrifying might. Divine light surged and space crumbled. It was no exaggeration to say that if a normal return to void intermediate stage mighty figure were to take this punch head-on, they would be reduced to nothingness. Little Xie's expression remained unchanged, and even though she was quite petite, her sword was extremely powerful as she slashed toward Dong Yang's fist head-on. Boom! The fist and sword clashed, and explosive energy erupted forth in a frenzy. Little Xie was forced into retreat by the terrifying power, but a bloodthirsty smile appeared on Dong Yang's face as he continued to press forward. A series of sharp, inky black sword projections flashed through the air. Little Xie's attacks were very powerful, but each and every one of her sword strikes would be nullified by Dong Yang's terrifying fist. From the get-go, little Xie was already on the back foot. This wasn't actually a big deal. Lin felt like little Xie still had some trump cards up her sleeve, so he wasn't in a hurry. However, he was soon greeted by an extremely astonishing scene. Little Xie blocked Dong Yang's attacks relentlessly with her sword, and tears flowed from the corners of her large, watery eyes. She sobbed through her tiny nose, and her thin lips pouted in an aggrieved manner. Lin's mouth gaped open with shock. Little Xie is crying? Little Xie turned to glare at Lin with an enraged expression, and she bit down on her lower lip as if she was trying to hold back her tears, but she still couldn't stop them, and she looked extremely pitiful and aggrieved. Holy shit! How dare you bully my little Xie? You must be tired of living. Lin was instantly enraged. Regardless of whether this was little Xie's prey or not, he immediately unleashed his Fire God mode and unleashed a Fire God fist that was 4 times more powerful than his Fire God arms. Piss off. Don't bully little Xie. The fist fell like the sun. Dong Yang's fist collided with Lin's, and he was sent crashing into the ground by the terrifying fist projection. His twisted, pitch-black palm had almost shattered, and that was a testament to just how terrifying Lin's punch was. However, it was also at this moment that a sense of heart-wrenching grief welled up in his heart. Sob, sob, sob. He began to cry. Lin clearly had the upper hand, but he still cried sadly. Woo woo woo, what did you do to me? Lin cried and roared. A sinister smile appeared on Dong Yang's face as he crawled up from the ground. He spread open his wings and abruptly pounced toward Lin as his fists continued to unleash explosive power. Lin's heart jolted with shock, and he hurriedly tried to defend himself with his fists, only to discover that his powers had been reduced to a certain extent due to his excessive grief. Let me help you. Little Xie slashed her evil-slaying sword toward Dong Yang. Thus, Lin and little Xie wept as they battled Dong Yang. Dabai's eyes widened in shock as he looked on from afar. To be honest, the scene was as strange as it could get. Thankfully, with Lin's participation, the two of them were able to keep Dong Yang at bay. One of Dong Yang's wings had been sliced off by little Xie, while the other had been pulverized by Lin. Go to hell. Lin wailed as his divine inspection technique flashed through his eyes, and his fist pierced through Dong Yang's blind spot before striking the side of Dong Yang's waist. Boom! Dong Yang's waist caved in and twisted from the force of the punch. The resulting shockwaves reduced the ground within a radius of 5 kilometers to dust. Pfff. Dong Yang threw up a mouthful of blood as he stumbled back in retreat. At this moment, little Xie had already appeared before him, and a black light erupted from her evil-slaying sword. Evil Sword Technique, Royal Divine Monarch. An extremely powerful sword intent soared into the sky, tearing through the rock stratum overhead. The sword projection was like a divine monarch, paramount and unstoppable. Dong Yang hurriedly unleashed a divine Tao barrier, but the sword projection sliced through the barrier like a hot knife through butter before tearing Dong Yang's body apart. Ah! Dong Yang let loose a wail of anguish as blood gushed forth from his chest, and he hurtled back in retreat again. Lin and little Xie immediately caught up to him and pummeled him while he was down. Do you think you've won? No, you'll be the ones to lose in the end. Divine Tao light erupted from Dong Yang's arms again. This time, it was an extremely dark color, making his arms as hard as black divine metal. Despair for me! Dong Yang roared as he clenched his claws into fists, upon which the divine Tao light erupted as he unleashed a barrage of attacks toward Lin and little Xie. Lin and little Xie clashed mercilessly with brute force. A second later, Dong Yang was blasted into the ground again as he threw up a mouthful of blood. You've lost for sure. There's no chance of winning. What awaits you is boundless despair. Dong Yang crawled up from the crater in the ground with a sinister smile on his face before pouncing toward Lin and little Xie again. 3 seconds later. Boom! Dong Yang was pummeled into the ground again, and his body was riddled with wounds. You can't beat me, are you feeling despair? Dong Yang threw up a mouthful of blood as a smug smile appeared on his face. Dabai was dumbstruck. Has this sinister devil been beaten senseless? It's been beaten to the point where it can't even retaliate, but it's clearly the one in despair. However, right at this moment, Unlin and Little Xie's expressions became extremely grave. It's over, Little Xie, we can't beat it. Unlin had tears streaming down his face. That's right, our opponent is simply too powerful. We're going to lose if things continue like this. Little Xie wiped away her tears with bloodshot eyes. Let's beg for mercy. Unlin trembled uncontrollably. Dabai's eyes widened as he stared at the scenes unfolding before his eyes, wondering if he was hallucinating. What the hell was going on? Unlin and Little Xie were as ferocious as tigers, and they had beaten their opponents to a score of 0. But now, they were suddenly telling their opponents that they couldn't win and were going to surrender. Ha ha! You're going to lose. I'll never forgive you. None of you will be able to escape. All of you will die here and experience despair. A divine light erupted from Dong Yang's inky black arms, and a series of strange symbols squirmed on his skin as he charged toward Unlin and Little Xie again before unleashing his fists at the same time. Boom! Unlin and Little Xie attacked at the same time. Energy shockwaves erupted for several kilometers. PFFF! Dong Yang threw up a mouthful of blood as he crashed to the ground, leaving a massive crater in the ground. Unlin's expression was one of panic and despair. Little Xie, we can't win. We have to find a chance to escape. Little Xie's legs were completely limp, and she collapsed onto the ground as she wiped away her tears. It's over. Dong Yang is so powerful, there's no way we can escape. We're dead for sure. Dabai slapped himself viciously on the face with his paw, and he grimaced in pain. F***ck, I'm not dreaming. So it's not Dong Yang who's been beaten senseless, it's Big Brother and Little Xie. Woof. Chapter 1243. Dabai stared at the scenes unfolding before his eyes with astonishment on his face. He could see that even though Dong Yang was being tormented relentlessly, Unlin and Little Xie's combat prowess was becoming more and more feeble as their fighting spirit continued to wane. Toward the end of the battle, they were already discussing how to escape. Dabai could see horror and despair on Unlin and Little Xie's faces. F***ck, are these two possessed? Woof. Dabai's heart was burning with anxiety upon seeing this, but he didn't know how to help them. What had Dong Yang done to them? Big Boss Dong Yang, I surrender. Please don't fight anymore. Please spare us. Unlin begged for mercy with despair on his face. Senior Dong Yang, I shouldn't have stabbed you with my sword. I apologize, I repent, Wah. Little Xie sobbed with a pitiable expression. Dabai felt like his horizons had been broadened significantly. This was the first time he had seen the two of them like this. Just as he was feeling astonished, Dong Yang completely ignored Unlin and Little Xie's pleas for mercy and charged directly toward them. Unlin could unleash his power to defend himself, but he seemed to have seen something extremely terrifying, and his expression was filled with despair. He couldn't even muster up the will to resist. Bam! Unlin was punched into the ground and his chest caved in. Little Xie's face turned pale with fright, and she screamed as she fled. Dong Yang chased after her in a frenzy before unleashing another fist toward her back. Little Xie was knocked flying for over a kilometer before crashing into the ground, leaving a massive trench in her wake. Dust and debris flew through the air, and her petite body was covered in dirt and rubble, making her appear extremely disheveled. A sinister smile appeared on Dong Yang's face as he looked at the two people he had just punched into the ground. How is it? Are you feeling despair? As a sinister devil, I possess boundless negative emotions within my body. My power of the divine Tao can infuse the boundless negative emotions within my body into my attacks, thereby infecting my opponents with negative emotions. With each attack, I can infuse negative emotions into my opponent's body. With so many layers of despair stacked on top of each other, you probably don't even have the courage to fight me anymore, do you? Ha ha! You can't escape, you can only be tortured to death by me. Dong Yang strode toward Enlin and Little Xie with a confident expression. Dabai, who was watching the battle from afar, suddenly understood. So this sinister devil's power of the divine Tao was related to negative emotions. No wonder Enlin and Little Xie had lost their will to fight and were in despair in the face of Dong Yang's attacks. They had been King tricked. So the question is, what can it do? What could he do to help them? Dabai fell into deep thought. At this moment, Dong Yang was already chortling with glee as he charged toward Enlin and Little Xie, and his fists became even more terrifying and violent. If they didn't hurry up, they would be hammered to death by Dong Yang. In order to break through the power of the emotional divine Tao, aside from using the absolute power of the divine Tao, there was another way, and that was to replace it with another type of emotion. However, the substitute emotion had to be extremely powerful, even more powerful than the power of the divine Tao of the sinister devils. It had to be of a higher level. Dabai looked at Enlin, who was being pummeled, and murmured to himself, "How about I toss a pile of dog *t at Big Brotherin? That way, his hatred toward me should be able to overwhelm his despair toward Dong Yang, right? Woof?" A second later, he immediately shook his head and rejected this idea. No. What if Big Brother and makes dog meat out of me the next day after I dispel that power? That's way too terrifying. I can't sacrifice myself for something like that. The price is too high. Woof. Dabai shuddered at the mere thought of the consequences. That's right. Dabai suddenly clapped his paws together, and his eyes lit up. He recalled back to when Big Brother and had asked him if he had ever cried in the Myriad Mountain realm, to which he replied that he had never cried even once ever since he was born, and that he was a 100% tough guy dog. And then, in the next second, he began to bawl his eyes out. There was no trace, no warning, no distance, no energy fluctuations. An emotional spell technique of this level was most likely of a higher level than Dong Yang's spell technique. He had to give it his all. Dabai gritted his teeth and ran toward Enlin before roaring, Big Brother and, hurry up and use that spell technique. Woof. Enlin faltered slightly upon hearing this before a look of despair appeared on his face. Dong Yang is so terrifying and powerful, what's the point of using the make you cry spell technique on him? Dabai yelled, Big Brother and, have you been scared senseless? Use it on Little Xie, woof. Enlin opened his mouth before coming to a sudden realization. He understood what Dabai was trying to say. He had to do it. Enlin turned toward Little Xie, who had just been bashed into the ground by Dong Yang's fist again. Blood trickled from the corners of her lips, and even her evil-slaying sword almost slipped out of her hand. Little Xie cry. Enlin was afraid of Dong Yang and was in despair at his power, but that didn't mean he was afraid of Little Xie. Making Little Xie cry was a very easy task for him. The make you cry spell technique was instantly unleashed. All of a sudden, Little Xie's grief flowed like a river again, and she sobbed with all her might. Wah! The little girl in black sobbed from within the crater. Enlin was very pleased to see Little Xie cry, and he pulled out his vermilion bird mirror before looking at his own handsome face before unleashing the make you cry spell technique again. Wah! Enlin also began to sob. He was crying from his own handsomeness. That's right, he unleashed the make you cry spell technique upon the vermilion bird mirror, thereby triggering a rebound spell technique. The make you cry spell technique was reflected by the vermilion bird mirror, upon which boundless grief suddenly welled up in his heart. Gotcha! It was as if some kind of power had been broken by his surging grief. Ha ha! Feel the despair. Dong Yang's fists rained down upon Little Xie again, and the power behind his fists was so powerful that even the space within a radius of over 1,000 feet collapsed. Little Xie sobbed as she picked up her evil-slaying sword. Evil sword technique, lightning spirit. Her body transformed into a bolt of lightning, and her sword flashed with crimson light. A ghastly sword wound appeared on Dong Yang's chest. Little Xie stood beside him with tears streaming down her face, but her evil-slaying sword was already stained with blood. In the next instant, Unlin's fist suddenly arrived. An earth-shattering boom erupted, accompanied by the sound of flesh and bone being torn apart. Dong Yang was bashed into the ground by Unlin's fist, creating a crater with a radius of over a kilometer. Pwah! Dong Yang threw up a large mouthful of blood, and his body fell limply to the ground as he stared up at the two people in the sky with tears streaming down their faces, but their eyes were filled with determination. How could this be? Why aren't you in despair anymore? This is impossible. Dong Yang was completely dumbstruck and incredulous. Despair. Little Xie cocked her head to the side as a cold light flashed through her eyes. An earth-shattering sword projection erupted from her evil-slaying sword. Unlin clenched his fists, and his knuckles crackled. The divine flame and holy flame intertwined, and it was as if the sun had descended from the heavens. We'll let you experience true despair right now. Chapter 1244. Dong Yang crawled up from the ground, and after a brief daze, his battle intent was reignited. The inky black divine light of despair on his arms became even more intense, as if it were able to suck away one's soul. You want me to fall into despair? No, you won't be able to defeat me. Feel fear, feel despair. Dong Yang roared as he charged toward Unlin and Little Xie. We have to end this as quickly as possible, Unlin said with tears flowing from his eyes. Little Xie nodded with tears in her eyes. Unlin's right arm became extremely crimson as terrifying fire energy incessantly stimulated the latent potential of his right arm. His right arm gradually swelled up, and its might increased explosively. His blood vessels bulged, but they were the color of holy fire. His entire arm lit up, as if the sun had appeared in the inky black abyss, illuminating all things. Quintuple Fire God Fist. Unlin's fist crashed down upon Dong Yang. If Unlin's attack was the sun, then Dong Yang's attack was the darkness of despair. This was a clash between light and darkness. Boom! The resulting shockwaves twisted the space around them. The sun in the sky crashed down, while the darkness of the abyss rose up from the ground. The two of them clashed, as if light and darkness were clashing with one another. Gale-force winds swept forth for over 50 kilometers, reducing the earth to dust. Dabai was already spectating from afar and had unleashed the shield of promised victory, but he was still knocked flying for over a kilometer by the shockwaves, upon which he threw up a mouthful of blood. What a terrifying battle! Are they going to tear this abyss apart? Woof! Dabai stared at the epicenter of the explosion with astonishment in his eyes. At the epicenter of the collision, in the face of Unlin's attack, the darkness began to be torn apart. Dong Yang's twisted inky black fist began to disintegrate. This terrifying power did not stop there. Instead, it extended all the way to his arm, where his entire arm was pulverized into nothingness. Dong Yang let loose a wail of anguish as he plummeted from the sky. A petite figure quickly approached him, and her inky black sword bared its bloodthirsty fangs. Feel despair. The corners of Little Xie's lips curled up slightly, and her eyes were filled with a cold and merciless light. A series of extremely sharp sword projections tore through the air before descending upon Dong Yang's body. Each and every strike was powerful enough to split mountains and sever seas. After being hammered into the ground by Unlin, Dong Yang was completely unable to withstand so many sword projections, and a series of gruesome gashes were instantly torn into his body. Fresh blood spurted out, and bloody scars covered every corner of his body. There was no longer any part of him that was intact. Rumble! Dong Yang crashed into the ground, causing the ground to tremor violently. At this moment, he was already in an extremely wretched state. His body was a bloody mess, and his internal organs had been pulverized. If it weren't for the fact that his life force was extremely tenacious, his injuries would have been enough to kill an ordinary return to void stage mighty figure 100 times over. You. Do you feel despair? Dong Yang was still unyielding, and he spoke in a patient manner. Lin and little Xie landed before him with cold smiles on their faces. I can feel your despair. Lin chuckled. Dong Yang, I won't die. I am the most powerful and terrifying demon. I will never die, and I will exact my vengeance with all my might. All you will face in the end is boundless despair and death. Dong Yang's demonic voice lingered in his ears for a long time, and it was imbued with the power to make one fall into depravity. In that instant, Lin was suddenly struck by a hint of fear and horror. Looks like the effect has worn off. Let's do it again. Lin turned toward the little girl beside him before glaring at her. Wah! Little Xie was suddenly struck by a wave of grief, and she burst into tears again. Your effect has worn off, but mine hasn't. Why are you making me cry? What? Little Xie raised her evil-slaying sword with indignation before slashing it toward Lin. Lin hurriedly evaded before pulling out his vermilion bird mirror to make himself cry again. What? Lin had tears streaming down his face. I'm just playing it safe. The two of them began to bicker with tears streaming down their faces, creating a very peculiar sight to behold. Dabai carefully approached them, and his expression shifted to one of shock upon seeing the two of them bawling their eyes out. Are you two mourning for Dong Yang? Woof. Dong Yang, Lin and little Xie, so be it, let's take care of what we need to do first. Lin looked down at Dong Yang and said, Where's the other dark bead? Dong Yang panted with a cold smile. Why would I tell someone who's about to die? Feel despair. The veins on Lin's forehead bulged. Is this B***** still living in a dream? Little Xie raised her sword expressionlessly. Cut the crap. I'm going to kill him. An extremely terrifying sword projection erupted from her evil-slaying sword as she spoke. In his current state, Dong Yang couldn't muster up much energy to defend himself. It was quite foreseeable that he would die the moment the sword projection fell. However, right at this moment, a faintly discernible black figure appeared before Dong Yang and raised a hand. Little Xie's extremely powerful sword projection instantly disappeared without a trace. Regardless of whether it was her sword intent or her sword intent, all of it had disappeared, leaving no trace in this world. It was as if she had gone from existence to nothingness. Lin and little Xie's expressions shifted drastically as grave expressions appeared on their faces. Who are you? Lin's entire body tensed up as he activated the power within his body. The black figure opened its eyes, which were as dazzling as the stars in the sky. I am the Night Monarch, the ruler of the abyss of evil. Here comes another self-proclaimed monarch. Lin couldn't help but burst into laughter. This is already the third one. All of them want to be the boss. How interesting. Buy one get one free. I can kill two of them now. Little Xie pursed her lips with an extremely disdainful expression. Night Monarch. After a few seconds, the Night Monarch continued, I really am the ruler of the abyss of evil. An extremely terrifying aura erupted from his body as he spoke. This aura was ancient and boundless, as if an eternal night had descended upon this world. Lin and little Xie's expressions instantly shifted drastically. They had only sensed this aura from Ziwei and the Celestial Larch. This was a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. Lin's smile congealed on his face, and he took a deep breath before speaking in a respectful voice. Esteemed ruler of the abyss of evil, senior Night Monarch, may I ask why you have come here? The Night Monarch faltered slightly at the sight of Lin's reaction. This Dong Yang cannot die. He is my most important test subject. Test subject? Lin stared at the Night Monarch with astonishment on his face. using a sinister devil who had attained the power of the divine Tao as a test subject? That was way over the top. But Anlin was a little hesitant. You came here for the dark bead, right? I can give it to you. The Night Monarch seemed to have seen through Anlin's thoughts, and he splayed open his palm toward Dong Yang's back, upon which a peculiar dark light flashed. In the next instant, an inky black bead appeared in his hand. The Night Monarch tossed the bead to Anlin without any hesitation. For you. Anlin caught the dark bead with a slightly dazed expression. The Night Monarch sure was easy to talk to, however. A thought suddenly occurred to him. How did you know I wanted the dark bead? Chapter 1245. I calculated that. I also know that you're collecting the dark beads in order to obtain the inheritance of the sky-sealing Dark King. The Black Shadow's voice was warm and gentle, and it seemed to be smiling as it spoke. Why did it seem to be seemed? That was because Anlin could only see a humanoid Black Shadow, but he couldn't see the Night Monarch's exact appearance. The eyes were quite beautiful. They were blue with a hint of black, as if they were gems embedded into the black body. Not only did they not give off a creepy or terrifying feeling, but they instead gave off a sense of harmony and allure. Little Xie turned to the Night Monarch with an aggrieved expression. Anlin had achieved his goal by obtaining the dark beads, but she had lost the juicy meat that was supposed to be in her grasp. And it was possibly the most delicious juicy meat in the entire abyss of evil. Anlin pretended to be nonchalant as he looked down at the wretched Dong Yang on the ground. Pardon me for asking, but what is the experimenter you speak of planning to do to it? Using a sinister devil as an experimental subject was most likely some kind of secret plan in Anlin's mind. He was already viewing the Night Monarchs as villains who were plotting something big in secret. He wasn't expecting the Night Monarch's reply. However, to his surprise, the Night Monarch replied in a straightforward manner, "The experiment I'm conducting involves a huge secret, so I can tell you. But first, do you know where the sinister devils in the abyss of evil come from?" Anlin's brows furrowed slightly. He didn't want to think too much about this. However, the story of Ji Yanling and Wang Lu had been deeply engraved in his mind. He was well aware of how Wang Lu had fallen to the sinister devils. Sinister devils used to be humans, right? Anlin asked. An expression of shock appeared on the Night Monarch's face. You know about this? He had only wanted to keep the Night Monarch guessing, but Anlin had told him everything. Anlin nodded indifferently. I know a little, the Night Monarch asked in a faint voice. Then do you know why humans became sinister devils? Anlin began to think carefully. Sinister devils hadn't been around for a very long time, so the major event that led to humans becoming sinister devils was most likely a recent event. Could it be caused by the Purple Star incident? Anlin made a bold guess. The Night Monarch. How do you know about this? Was he going to keep the Night Monarch in suspense? A little, Anlin replied modestly. His expression remained calm, but his heart surged with shock. The fact that demons were related to Purple Star was definitely not a trivial matter. After all, Purple Star was a civilization that had poked a giant hole in the sky. The Night Monarch didn't beat around the bush any longer. The Purple Star was struck by a backlash from the heavenly Tao, and its entire civilization was instantly destroyed. However, the disaster was not as simple as it seemed. Let's not talk about how the heavenly Tao is difficult to mend, and the calamity has descended once again. The repercussions of the heavenly Tao's backlash on the human race are not something that can be stopped just by killing all the Purple Star citizens. The evil demons are one of the scourges left behind. To be, the evil devils to be is 9 to be, to the 9 to be. To be to Mon's tribe Dong. To be. They used a special method to attach themselves to the humans of the Kingdom of the Nine States and the Buddhist Kingdom. In the face of boundless negative emotions, no human could resist this power, and they were all transformed into sinister devils. One by 100, 1 by 10, This power was more terrifying than the plague and more vicious than curses. It was as if it was trying to transform the entire human race into sinister devils. The Night Monarch spoke in a cold voice as the darkness behind him surged violently. Anlin was a little perplexed. Why haven't I heard of this before? Events of this magnitude would generally be recorded, so there was no way that not many people would have heard of it. The Night Monarch spoke in a slow voice. You have no idea just how heavy a price we had to pay in order to save the human race. Over 5 billion humans were transformed into sinister devils. Anlin was completely dumbstruck upon hearing this number. This was almost equivalent to the population of an entire state. Nuwa, the 3 Pure Ones, Dalord Luya, and the 5 God of Creation stage gods joined forces with 16 Tao integration stage super mighty figures to unleash a great sky-stealing teleportation spell formation to teleport all of the sinister devils to the Tai Chu continent. As a safety precaution, we also unleashed a divine technique to erase all of the living beings' memories of the sinister devils. That's right, the best way to deal with the spread of resentment from the entire civilization was to forget. The more we forget, the smaller the repercussions of this calamity will be. Anlin finally came to a sudden realization upon hearing the Night Monarch's words. No wonder he didn't know anything about sinister devils in the past. He didn't know what they were, nor did he know what they were. All he knew was that they were extremely terrifying demonic beings, so everyone had been struck by the great amnesia spell formation. A thought occurred to Anlin. Seeing as the sinister devils have already been teleported to the outside world, then the sinister devils in the abyss of evil, the Night Monarch looked at Anlin. Because I want to save them. Anlin faltered upon hearing this, and he looked into the Night Monarch's eyes to discover the seriousness and determination in his eyes. Over 5 billion people. They're all innocent, but they've been forced to wander the outside world, tortured by boundless negative emotions for over 10,000 years without being able to transcend. I want them to become humans again. I worked hard for a long time before the gods of creation agreed to set up a base in the abyss of evil to research sinister devils. You should know that the sinister devils in the abyss of evil have never voluntarily escaped from the abyss to harm outsiders. They're all under my jurisdiction. Anlin nodded. That was indeed the case. He had initially thought that sinister devils were afraid of light, but high-level sinister devils were completely immune to sunlight. Look at sinister devil Dong Yang. He looks so much like a human. The Night Monarch pointed at Dong Yang. Dong Yang's entire body was riddled with wounds, and his eyes were glazed over as he murmured, "Feel despair. Feel terror. All of you will fall into despair." The Night Monarch. Anlin nodded. Aside from the fact that he's a little incoherent, he's really no different from a human in every other aspect. Even if he's incoherent, that's only because he was beaten silly by me. The Night Monarch smiled. As their cultivation base progresses, they'll become more and more like humans. They'll be able to cultivate, they'll be able to speak, and they'll have emotions and desires. They'll no longer be crazy, chaotic, and disorderly. Humans can become sinister devils, so sinister devils can also become humans. I've been working on this for the past 10,000 years, and through Dong Yang's example, I've already found many ways to alleviate boundless negative emotions. This isn't just limited to power, but rather, it's from the very core of human emotions. The Night Monarch squatted down and caressed Dong Yang's face as he spoke in a gentle voice. Just one more step, just one more step. This was a beautiful scene. Anlin couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. There's one more thing, he said. What is it? The Night Monarch blinked. Anlin pointed at himself. This information is very important, right? Why are you telling me so much? Chapter 1246. Regardless of whether it was the sinister devils wreaking havoc in the Kingdom of the Nine States or the Night Monarch's experiments, they were all extremely important. It could be said that anyone below the Tao integration stage didn't even have the right to know about these things. So why would the Night Monarch tell Enlin so much in such a calm and collected manner? This really didn't make any sense. The Night Monarch stared at Enlin with his extremely beautiful eyes. Why did I tell you so much? Because we are fated to meet. Enlin faltered slightly and his lips twitched. Can you be any more perfunctory? What fate? This was fate. That was F** King Bulsh *T. He didn't say anything at all. The Night Monarch spoke again upon seeing Enlin's displeasure. You possess the Tian Ming Dao physique, which is extremely rare, and I also possess the Tian Ming Dao physique. We were born with a close affinity with the heavenly Dao. Is this reason enough? Enlin was astonished. I possess the Tian Ming Dao physique? The Night Monarch was also astonished. You didn't know? Enlin. He thought about it carefully. It seemed that when he had first obtained the system had mentioned once that he had some kind of Tian Ming Dao physique. His aptitude matched, and then they fused together. I think I have some recollection of this. In that case, I really do possess the Tian Ming Dao physique. Speaking of which, what is this Tian Ming Dao physique? Why haven't I sensed anything special about it? The Night Monarch replied patiently, We are blessed by the heavens. Don't you think it's extremely easy to cultivate spell techniques, observe intents, and make breakthroughs? Furthermore, it's very easy to resonate with heaven and earth. How could it be easy? Last time, I almost failed to absorb the realm essence crystals and became a eunuch. And that time when I kissed the sun, I almost burned to death. You call that easy? Enlin flared up with rage. The Night Monarch was at a loss. Are we talking about the same thing? No. Nothing. Please continue. Enlin knew that he had let the cat out of the bag, and he chuckled apologetically. The Night Monarch continued. Our Tian Ming Dao physiques possess exceptional aptitudes and a close affinity with the heavenly Dao. Thus, when we cultivate in dark-type spell techniques, there are certain bonuses for dark-type spell techniques. The corner of Enlin's mouth twitched when he heard this. He was like a little son using the Vulcan mode all day long. Wasn't the style a little crooked? In the entire Tai Chu continent, only you, me, and Dao Lord Luya possess this type of constitution. The Night Monarch continued. Dao Lord Luya? Enlin shuddered. What's wrong? Yi Di asked curiously when he saw Enlin's reaction. Is Dao Lord Luya an old man with a wretched smile? Enlin said angrily. The Night Monarch cocked his head to the side. Dao Lord Luya is suave and handsome. How can he be an old man with a perverted smile? Enlin's expression didn't change at all, but his heart became more and more certain. No wonder Chang'e said that he had a backer named Dao Lord Luya. The old man who had given him the system was none other than Dao Lord Luya. That bastard had definitely transformed. I also have the Nether Heaven Dao physique. That's the only way I can withstand the system and blame it on me. It's a pity that I can't see him now. Otherwise, I'm going to ask him what this weird system is all about. The Night Monarch continued. We are the chosen ones who are destined to change this world. It's fate that brought us together here. Enlin was suddenly struck by a sense of foreboding upon hearing this. Do you want to know more about the heaven-crushing sect? The Night Monarch asked. Enlin. Sure enough, it was the heaven-crushing sect or the heaven-mending sect again. The Night Monarch spoke in a meaningful and heartfelt voice. Do you know? Our world is currently facing an extremely dire crisis. All right, that's enough. Are you a heavenly disciple? Enlin interjected with a dark expression. I don't have the right to be a heavenly disciple. I'm the heavenly servant of the first heavenly disciple. The Night Monarch explained. Enlin's heart jolted with shock. Even someone as powerful as the Night Monarch couldn't become a heavenly disciple? This heaven-crushing sect was a little terrifying. Then don't invite me. Even Cyril and Chun Chun can't persuade me, so you should give up. Enlin was still very firm in his refusal. The Night Monarch was shocked to hear this, and he stared intently at Enlin. Who would have thought that you and our heaven-crushing sect would be so fated to be chosen by two heavenly disciples at the same time? What's wrong with that? They're asking me to become the third heavenly disciple, and they're even offering me divine tools, divine pills, and a harem. I rejected all of those conditions, so you should just give up. Unlin waved his hand in refusal. The Night Monarch was astonished. This was the first time he had been astonished. Third heavenly disciple? You rejected them? Is there a problem? Unlin was a little confused. The Night Monarch stared intently at Unlin, as if he was trying to see through him. I've really underestimated you. You're even more important than I imagined. The Night Monarch wasn't disappointed in the slightest upon hearing Unlin's rejection. Instead, his gaze became even more scorching. Unlin was a little flustered. It was quite strange to be stared at like this by an emperor. Regardless of whether I'm important or not, I won't join the heaven-crushing sect even if I starve to death and can't get out of the abyss of evil. Unlin spoke in a firm voice. All right. A hint of disappointment appeared in the Night Monarch's eyes. In any case, the heaven-crushing sect will always be open to you. I await the day you change your mind. Unlin nodded and didn't say anything else upon hearing this familiar statement. This was a Dao integration stage super mighty figure, after all, so he could at least give him some face. An extremely raspy voice sounded. Unlin turned his eyes to the ground to discover that Dong Yang was lying on the ground, throwing up blood. Are you guys done chatting? I think I can still be saved, Erg. He threw up another mouthful of blood, staining the ground red. The Night Monarch was given a massive fright. I almost forgot about you. My poor Dong Yang, don't worry, I'll make sure nothing happens to you. Dong Yang. Feel despair. The Night Monarch had already injected his power into Dong Yang's body to heal his injuries. Senior Night Monarch, if there's nothing else, I'll be taking my leave now. Unlin felt like there was no point in staying here any longer. The Night Monarch nodded. See you again. Unlin held onto the reluctant little Xie's hand and left on Dabai's back. Master, what do? I can't bring myself to kill sinister devils after learning that they're human clones, little Xie murmured with a conflicted expression. Unlin turned to little Xie with a hint of surprise on his face. I didn't think you'd think this way. In his heart, little Xie had always been a willful and domineering person. It was very rare for her to be so considerate of a human who had already become a sinister devil. You need sinister devils? I have many sinister devils here who have lost control and are already beyond redemption. They've been tainted by too much slaughter, and they've already lost all emotions. I can give them to you. The Night Monarch suddenly spoke. Chapter 1247. Unlin's footsteps faltered upon hearing this. Little Xie turned toward the Night Monarch with a perplexed expression. The Night Monarch put his hands together, and a powerful spatial ripple swept toward them. In the next instant, Unlin and little Xie appeared in an unfamiliar space. There were blue flames that seemed to be able to freeze one's consciousness in this place. They burned on a fire disk, and the cold light of the flames lit up this entire space, imbuing it with a power that could calm one's soul. There were a series of cages around them, within which countless sinister devils were roaring and howling with menacing expressions. The Night Monarch spoke in a soft voice. They've been tainted by too much slaughter. Not only have they harmed other living beings, but they've even devoured their own kind. The last trace of humanity has been wiped away, so even I can't save them. Little Sword Spirit, if you want to obtain something from slaying sinister devils, you can try them. They're actually a batch of sinister devils that I'm planning to take care of. Little Xie made her way over to the sinister devils upon hearing the Night Monarch's words. The sinister devils before her were even more twisted and insane than the sinister devils she had seen in the past. Boundless negative emotions surged toward her like a tsunami, as if they were trying to drag her into an abyss of depravity. You must be in a lot of pain, right? Let me free you from this. Little Xie spoke in a voice that only she could hear. Her evil-slaying sword slashed through the air, leaving a black shadow in its wake before puncturing the sinister devil's body. Gasp! The sinister devil let loose a hoarse cry as its body completely disappeared from this world. At the same time, a burst of power flowed into the evil-slaying sword through the blade. Little Xie closed her eyes and carefully savored the sensation. She could feel that her power had recovered significantly, as if some kind of flaw had been remedied, and the source of power within her body had increased significantly. "How is it?" Anlin asked with a concerned expression. "It's working." Little Xie nodded before making her way toward another cage. After that, Little Xie repeated the process of inserting and withdrawing her sword. Inserting, withdrawing, one sinister devil after another fell to the evil-slaying sword. Little Xie's power became more and more fearsome. The Night Monarch was also able to see this. Gradually, his gaze toward Anlin became even more scorching. There were tens of thousands of demons locked in the cages. Little Xie repeated her previous actions, and before she knew it, she had slain over 10,000 sinister devils, all the way until she slashed her sword toward one of the few remaining sinister devils. Rumble! It was as if a certain shackle had been broken. Little Xie's aura soared explosively, sweeping vital energy within a radius of over 1,000 kilometers. What? This aura? Yidi's eyes widened as he stared at the scene before him in shock. The power of darkness within the abyss of evil was like an incomparably huge whirlpool, constantly surging into the body of the little girl in the black dress. There was no end, no boundary. Little Xie's aura surged explosively like a rocket, becoming more and more vast and ethereal. Divine light shook, smashing through space. The space that I created independently was actually destroyed? Yidi took a deep breath. Anlin, Dabai, Little Xie, and the Night Monarch reappeared in the depths of the abyss of evil due to the shattering of the independent space. Looking at everyone that had returned, Dong Yang sensed an aura that struck fear into his heart, and he finally began to howl in despair. "Ah! Don't come near me! Save me!" No one paid any heed to Dong Yang. The phenomena unleashed by Little Xie did not stop there. The power of darkness surged into her body, as if it were going to engulf the entire power of the abyss of evil. The Night Monarch's heart throbbed with pain, and he turned to Little Xie with a beseeching expression. "It wasn't easy for me to draw in this power of darkness from the veins of the earth, so please use it sparingly. Even though the power of darkness was endless, it could easily be depleted if it was drawn too quickly." Boom! Her aura surged explosively again. An inky black divine sword appeared on Little Xie's forehead on her chubby face. Boundless black divine light surged forth before enshrouding Little Xie's body like a cloak of feathers, making her appear as if she were the queen of the night. A terrifying aura spread out, pressing down on Dong Yang, making it difficult for him to even breathe. The Night Monarch stumbled back in retreat as an astonished expression appeared on his face. "Her divine Tao has transformed into a sword, and her divine light has transformed into a cloak of feathers. Could it be that this sword spirit is going to become a god?" Anlin was struck by Little Xie's divine light, but not only was he completely unscathed, he was instead feeling extremely comfortable. Even his meridians and bones were being nourished, thereby benefiting him immensely. Is Little Xie finally going to become a divine tool? He was very happy for Little Xie. After being stuck at the pinnacle of the immortal tool tier for so long, she was finally going to make a breakthrough. In a place that no one could see, the clear sky outside the abyss of evil had been transformed into complete darkness. Regardless of whether it was the humans or the ant tribe, all of them looked up at the sky with panicked expressions, as if doomsday had descended upon them. Anxiety, horror, trembling, and all types of emotions welled up in their hearts. Even the celestial Dharch, who was situated in the distance in the celestial court, abruptly rose to his feet. His eyes narrowed as he looked toward the southeastern direction of the Kingdom of the Nine States, as if he could see through space to that vast expanse of darkness. What terrifying energy fluctuations! What is that thing making a breakthrough? In the air above the abyss of evil, an inky black pillar of divine light fell from the sky into the abyss. This was an extremely powerful pillar of divine light that instantly reduced everything in its path to nothingness. All of a sudden, the pillar of divine light was completely engulfed by the woman in black. This time, the vital energy had already surged for several thousand kilometers, completely exceeding the range of Enlin's senses. Even the night monarch would be unable to sense its range. Enlin was given a fright by this phenomenon. This was the most extravagant phenomenon he had ever seen. This indicated that little Xie was absorbing an extremely vast amount of energy. She wouldn't die from overeating, would she? Enlin was a little concerned. Countless divine symbols and peculiar totems fell from the sky, as if they were blessings from the heavens, and they flowed relentlessly into little Xie's body. Enlin was completely dazzled. The night monarch was even more dumbstruck. Is this what it looks like to become a divine tool? Don't lie to me. An hour later, heaven and earth finally fell silent again. A ray of sunlight shone down from the sky, passing through the boundless abyss pierced by the divine light before enshrouding the little girl's body, making her skin appear as if it were made of jade. The little girl opened her inky black eyes, which were filled with an extremely pure darkness that seemed to be able to engulf all light in this world. Little Xie, it's done? Enlin asked with excitement. The little girl nodded with a toothy smile. It's done. Enlin stroked his chin as he looked at the sword in the little girl's hand. It's clearly become a divine tool, so why is the evil-slaying sword still so ugly and black? It hasn't changed in the slightest? Little Xie made her way over to Enlin with a fake smile on her face. It hasn't changed in the slightest? Don't worry, I'll show you what true change looks like. A chill suddenly ran down Enlin's spine, and his heart jolted violently. Killing intent. Chapter 1248. Enlin instinctively retreated in an instant. A cold smile appeared on little Xie's face. You called me ugly? I'm going to exact my revenge right now. Boom. The space suddenly began to warp and warp. Heaven and earth suddenly transformed under the illumination of an inky black divine light. This was a place with no sense of direction or space. Everything was shrouded in darkness and nothingness, with only little Xie standing within the darkness. This is the domain of the divine sword. It's rumored that after countless years of refinement, there's a small chance that a divine tool that has nurtured a spirit will attain its own unique domain. She has only just made a breakthrough, but she already possesses such a terrifying domain. This is incredible! The night monarch exclaimed. Enlin was given a massive fright upon hearing this. Little Xie, this is all a misunderstanding. Let me explain. A cold smile appeared on little Xie's face. My foolish master, you have to pay for what you said. She held her sword horizontally in front of her, from which a cold and forbidding sword projection emanated. Countless inky black divine symbols appeared on the blade of the sword, which revolved around it like tornadoes. An earth-shattering sword intent that threatened to engulf Enlin began to erupt forth. It was extremely pure and imbued with boundless divine intent, making one feel as if they were looking at a true god. F***ck, what kind of terrifying sword intent is this? Enlin felt a chill run down his spine, and he felt as if he were about to be engulfed by little Xie's power. Little Xie was getting serious. Enlin knew that he couldn't hesitate any longer, and he immediately unleashed his evading turtle technique. Brilliant green light erupted as an extremely dazzling turtle shell appeared before enshrouding his entire body. In his evading turtle technique, he would be able to last for a while even against attacks from mighty figures at the Return to Void Pinnacle stage. Very good. Only now do you have the right to spar with me. Little Xie became even more excited upon seeing this, and the sword intent of her evil-slaying sword also climbed to the very peak. Your King lacking a lesson. Unlin was enraged, and he hid in his turtle shell before opening up a small hole to unleash a bolt of golden void lightning that had been enhanced by the lightning amplification technique. The dazzling golden light was like the first ray of light that tore through the endless darkness. It was extremely dazzling, and its power was terrifying to the extreme. This was the most powerful attack that Unlin could unleash with his lightning spell technique. Little Xie looked at Unlin with a smile. Your mouth needs some discipline too. Vanquish the heavens and slay all evil, annihilate. Little Xie swung her evil-slaying sword toward Unlin from afar. Within the scope of the sword domain, there seemed to be a strange fluctuation accompanied by the flying sword will. The blade of the sword was invisible, or rather, the omnipresent darkness was Little Xie's sword technique. Kacha! The massive bolt of golden void lightning began to disintegrate into nothingness. Unlin's heart jolted, and he was just about to retreat when he discovered that Little Xie's sword intent had pierced through his extremely sturdy turtle shell and struck him directly. What kind of strange attack was this? Unlin's expression changed drastically. He thought to himself that he was really done for. Rip. He felt as if his entire body had exploded. Unlin's clothes were reduced to nothingness right before the dumbstruck eyes of the Night Monarch and Dabai. He stood on the spot in his underwear, completely naked. The semi-transparent turtle shell was unable to obstruct the view of his body. Holy F***ck. What the F***ck is that? Woof. Dabai's mouth gaped open. Does this sword spirit girl play with him all the time? The Night Monarch was astonished. He had thought that a sword spirit attacking its master was already quite shocking, but who would have thought that he would be able to witness a sword spirit ripping off its master's clothes? Unlin came to his senses in an instant, and he clasped his hands over his body before glaring at Little Xie with an enraged expression. Little Xie, I'm going to kill you! Little Xie burst into laughter as she put on the mischievous expression of a little demon girl who had gotten away with her prank. Oops, I just blew up your clothes. That's a bit of a mistake. I should have blown up your underwear as well. Little Xie glanced at Unlin's entire body before blushing slightly as she averted her gaze. Unlin felt a chill run down his spine upon hearing Little Xie's words. Little Xie's sword strike was simply far too uncanny. It was able to reduce his opponent's objects into nothingness. If she were to attack his underwear, he might accidentally lose his dick as well. Who was he going to complain to then? With this in mind, Unlin flared up with rage. Little Xie, that's enough. If you keep this up, don't blame me for being merciless. Unlin glowered at Little Xie with a ferocious killing intent in his eyes. Little Xie nodded, and heaven and earth transformed again as everyone returned to their original location. Dong Yang was still moaning on the ground, but the Night Monarch and Dabai both wore expressions of shock on their faces. This was the first time Dabai had seen Unlin surrender after being beaten to the point where he couldn't even defend himself. The Night Monarch was a little perplexed by Little Xie's sword technique. He could sense the sword intent and energy fluctuations, but he couldn't sense the form of the energy. In other words, he didn't know how Little Xie was able to slice off Unlin's clothes through his turtle shell. This was far too uncanny. Even if it was a divine tool, it should have left a mark. After Little Xie withdrew her domain, Unlin finally put away his turtle shell as well before putting on a new set of clothes. This is just a small lesson for you. If you dare to insult me again, don't blame me for being merciless. Little Xie raised her chin with a smug expression on her round face. She prepared to jump back into the evil-slaying sword as she spoke. However, her hand was suddenly grabbed by Unlin. Little Xie turned to Unlin with a stunned expression. Unlin spoke with a smile on his face. You've been wandering around the abyss of evil this entire time. Why do you suddenly want to go back now? Little Xie's expression was a little unnatural in the face of Unlin's question. Unlin stared directly at Little Xie with a sly smile on his face. Are you tired? You must be tired after using that technique. You! Little Xie bit down on her lower lip and was just about to raise her sword in front of her. Lin reacted even more quickly, and he instantly twisted Little Xie's wrist to snatch the evil-slaying sword back. I'm the one who refined the evil-slaying sword, your master. Do you think I don't know if you're tired or not? Don't worry if you're tired, I'll give you a massage. Lin chuckled. The fact that he was able to snatch Little Xie's sword away so easily meant that she was even more feeble than he had imagined. What are you trying to do? Little Xie was starting to panic. This was the first time she had used her domain and that super powerful technique, and it had indeed expended almost all of her energy. It could be said that she was truly a feeble little girl now. What am I trying to do? Didn't I tell you? You're so tired, so I'll give you a massage. Lin extended his demonic claws toward the trembling Little Xie. No, don't come over. Ah! Save me! Little Xie screamed. However, Lin wasn't going to hold back, and his hands began to knead Little Xie's face in a frenzy. Her face was round and soft, and it was also extremely bouncy. Her round face could be kneaded into all types of shapes, and he felt like his hands were about to melt. In summary, it felt so good. The Night Monarch stared blankly at the scenes unfolding before him. Is this how Mr. Lin and the Sword Spirit usually do things? He was referring to a battle, then taking off her clothes, then rubbing her face. Dubai. Woof woof. Lin's smug laughter reverberated throughout the entire abyss of evil. Ha ha. I'm going to rub this face for an entire day. Chapter 1249. After fooling around for a while, Lin expressed his gratitude to the Night Monarch with a solemn expression. If it weren't for the Night Monarch, his Little Xie wouldn't have progressed so smoothly to become a divine tool. Immediately afterward, he rode on Dubai and bade farewell to the Night Monarch while rubbing Little Xie's head. The path back was very smooth. When Little Xie made her breakthrough, the divine light that descended from the sky had created a massive hole that led to the bottom of the abyss, and they flew all the way up. The abyss of evil didn't look as terrifying anymore now that there was a hole that led to the outside world. Aside from hearing some strange cries like, Lin, slow down, the child's father can't keep up, there didn't seem to be anything else that was out of the ordinary. Soon, Lin returned to the abyss of evil on Dubai's back. He looked at the blue sky and white clouds, as well as the vast and boundless earth, and he felt a lot more at ease. Little Xie was the only one who sat silently on the dog's head with a stern expression. There were still red fingerprints on her delicate, pink cheek. She had clearly been ravaged by Lin in an inhumane manner. Little Xie was silently absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to recover her energy. She kept telling herself to endure it. Just half a day more, and she would be able to completely recover her energy. When that time came, she would be able to kill this D*Ned man. By the way, Little Xie, what technique did you use after becoming a divine tool? I feel like it's very powerful. Can you explain it to me? Lin asked with a smile. Humph. Little Xie harumphed coldly and didn't say anything. Her emotions were very clear on her face, and her attitude was very clear. She was ignoring Lin. Little Xie, don't be angry, all right? We're both in the wrong, so why don't we each take a step back? Lin tried to console Little Xie patiently. Little Xie looked ahead with her dead fish eyes and ignored Lin's words. Lin didn't give up, and he continued to enlighten her like Tripiaka. Little Xie was getting really annoyed, and she flared up with rage. Lin, even if I, Little Xie, were to die and jump off of Dubai's back, I'd rather die than tell you about the characteristics of my power. Oh, then I'll just rub your face. Lin was already itching to make a move. He looked at Little Xie's adorable features, and he couldn't help but reach out with his demonic hand. Don't. I'll tell you. Little Xie panicked, and she gritted her teeth as she begged with a humiliated expression, but you have to promise me that you won't rub my face again. Not today, Lin said. You. All right. Little Xie gritted her teeth and nodded. However, she was thinking to herself, you're not going to see the sun tomorrow anyway. Tell me, what's different about you after becoming a divine artifact? Anlin asked curiously. Little Xie explained with a stern expression, my evil-slaying sword has become much sharper after progressing to the divine tool level, and it has also been imbued with a divine nature, so it's much easier for me to slice through my enemy's divine Tao. If Master is just a little more powerful, perhaps you'll even be able to slice through immortal tools. Secondly, as a sword spirit, my power has also increased explosively, and my domain has become my own domain. On top of that, I've also attained a few new sword techniques that are compatible with the intent of heaven and earth. What new sword technique? Anlin asked excitedly. What new sword technique? Little Xie extended a finger. The first technique is the vanquish the heavens and slay all evil annihilation technique. As long as my opponent is within my domain, I can annihilate any part of their body. Targeted annihilation? Anlin's expression shifted. This technique was extremely difficult to defend against. If Little Xie had targeted his heart instead of his clothes, gasp! How terrifying! Little Xie was quite smug at the sight of Anlin's fearful expression, and she extended a second finger. The second technique is the vanquish the heavens and slay all evil purification technique. It can cleanse the opponent of poisons, curses, restrictions, and all types of negative energy. Anlin smacked his lips. This second technique seemed to be quite good as well. The third technique is the vanquish the heavens and slay all evil depravity technique. It can make the target fall under the influence of the sword intent and fall into a demonic state, thereby becoming your servant. Anlin sighed with emotion upon hearing this. You can be an angel, but you can also be a demon. Little Xie, you sure have a variety of styles. I can't compare to you. You can be a pervert, but you can also be AB*****, Little Xie replied humbly. Anlin, do you want your face pinched again? Anlin asked with a sinister expression. Little Xie recoiled slightly. You said you weren't going to pinch me today. Alright, hurry up and teach me your sword techniques. Anlin urged. Didn't you say that after becoming a divine tool, there's a method to directly instill sword techniques and true intent? There is, but... A hesitant expression appeared on Little Xie's face. I've overexerted myself. Let me recover first. Sure. Anlin was very much looking forward to it. Dabai continued to paddle in the air. Big brotherin, where are we going next? Woof. The place we're going to next is going to be very interesting. Anlin pulled out a map with a smile on his face as he looked at the location of the last dark bead. What place is it that Big Brother is so excited about? Woof. Dabai was curious. The 5-colored lightning pit. Anlin replied. Dabai's body shuddered, and it almost fell from the sky. It turned to Anlin with astonishment on its face. Big Brotherin, is that the mythological beast sex 5-colored lightning pit? What else could it be? Is there a second 5-colored lightning pit? Anlin chuckled. A rare expression of fear appeared on Dabai's face. Our sex 5-colored lightning pit is the exclusive body refinement ground for Grand Elder Kuei. How could the dark bead be there? Even if it was, Kuei wouldn't let us go to such a private place to find it. Woof. Your father is one of the 3 immortal beasts Tyrant King, so he definitely has a way, Anlin said with a smile. As long as there was a connection, everything was negotiable. But I don't want to go home. I'm being urged to get married as soon as I get home, woof. Dabai spoke with an aggrieved expression. It just wanted to be a single dog. Why was it so difficult? Anlin stroked Dabai's head with a meaningful and heartfelt expression. Dabai, you have to understand that you are a dog, not a human. Please change your standards of beauty and stop appreciating beautiful women as a human. No, I don't want to. I like big sisters with fair skin, long legs, and big breasts, woof. Dabai struggled with all its might with an unyielding expression. Unlin massaged his brows and decided to postpone this matter for another time. Let's go, Dabai. Let's go to the mythological beast sect, Unlin said. Sure, but you have to promise me one thing, big brotherin. If my parents urge me to get married, you have to help me. Woof. Dabai implored nervously. No problem. Unlin immediately agreed. He just had to stop them from getting married, he could do it. After receiving Unlin's promise, Dabai was finally a little less nervous. The three of them continued onward. After a long while, a majestic, immortal mountain appeared before their eyes. The mountain was massive, and the scenery was picturesque, extending as far as the eye could see. There were white cranes dancing in the air, spirit monkeys frolicking, and there were also many people walking lions, squirrels, fish, and all kinds of other small animals. It was a harmonious scene. There's no need to go through the main gate. Let's go straight to the inner court, woof. Dabai carried Unlin and Little Xie into the depths of the immortal mountain. Yo, Dabai, you're finally back. Are you here to marry Qinghua? A pleasant voice sounded from behind them. Chapter 1250. Dabai shuddered upon hearing the words, marry Qinghua. He turned around to find a four-winged black crow following behind him with a smile on its face. Phew! Big sister Mao Chen, you scared me to death. Woof! Dabai heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing that it was Mao Chen. Unlin was a little puzzled. Why aren't you nervous after seeing Mao Chen? A gay smile appeared on Dabai's face. That's because big sister Mao Chen is also a single person. Woof! Mao Chen proudly stretched out its neck and raised its four huge wings. Being single is free, happy, and carefree. I only belong to the blue sky, I don't belong to anyone. Unlin was slightly stunned by the four-winged black crow's aura. Dabai turned to Unlin with an elated expression. What do you think? Big sister Mao Chen is my role model. She's free and unfettered. How great is that? She's the most beautiful like that. Woof. Unlin nodded. This was what a true bachelor should be like. She was proud and confident, and she didn't even spare a glance at any living beings. She lived her life to the fullest. However, right at this moment, Mao Chen finally saw Unlin's face clearly. Her body trembled with excitement. Huh? Your sect leader, Unlin? I am indeed Unlin. Fellow Taoist Mao Chen, nice to meet you, Unlin greeted in a friendly manner. Ah! Mao Chen squealed with excitement, and all the feathers on her body stood on end. It really is you, Unlin. My idol, the person I love the most. Do you know how many suitors I've turned down for you? I belong to you. Unlin and Dabai's mouths gaped open in shock. Didn't you say you belong to the blue sky? Unlin was a little scared. Mao Chen extended her wings toward Unlin and offered words of praise. To me you are the blue sky, the moon, the sun, everything. Unlin, Dabai. Unlin clutched his chest as 10,000 divine beasts stampeded across his heart. What the hell was going on? Tears welled up in Dabai's eyes as he said in grief, No. Sister Mao Chen, why is it like this? Didn't you say you wanted to be single? Why did he have someone he liked again? Woof. It wasn't easy to find a single ally. In the end, Mao Chen betrayed the organization the moment she saw Unlin. Dabai could not accept such a cruel reality. Seeing this, Unlin righteously refused. I don't like birds. As soon as he said that, Mao Chen's body changed. A beautiful woman dressed in black feathers with 4 wings behind her appeared in front of Unlin. Fellow Taoist Unlin, do you like my current appearance? The woman's voice was gentle and flirtatious, and her phoenix-like eyes were glistening, capable of seizing one's soul and shaking one's mind. The snowy white skin beneath the black feathers and her curvaceous figure were even more alluring. Unlin and Dabai drew a sharp intake of breath in unison. She turned into a human just because she didn't like birds? What a terrifying maneuver! I still don't understand why you like me. Unlin calmed himself down. A vibrant smile appeared on Mao Chen's face. The southern heavenly winged nation's sun tree war god Enlin is you, right? So, I guessed right? Enlin was unable to deny this. You are the idol of all the birds in the southern heavenly winged nation, so you are naturally my idol as well. Aside from that, you've also killed a monarch of the Dark Wing tribe. Our Dark Crow tribe has always been persecuted by the Dark Wing tribe, so I've been very excited to see you do something like that. Aside from that, you're the sect leader of the 4-9 Immortal sect. However, you've issued an order for the sect to seek justice for some sect cultivators and itinerant cultivators who are in dire straits. You're a true hero in the cultivation world. Enlin came to a sudden realization. This was all because of Kong Zuexiang. Mao Chen leaned forward and looked at Enlin with a vibrant expression. You're such a good person, so why can't I like you? Enlin, Dabai. Please don't abuse me anymore. Enlin was a little overwhelmed by Mao Chen's passion, and he could only wave his hands. If you like me, then so be it. I'm not going to accept you anyway. I'm already taken. I know that. A nonchalant smile appeared on Mao Chen's face as she clasped a hand over her chest. Hence, I'm going to place my feelings for you in the blue sky. I still have some things to do, so I'll be taking my leave now. The woman in black turned around and flew into the blue sky again as she spoke, leaving a few drops of translucent liquid in her wake. There was even a faint sound of ing. Dabai looked on at Mao Chen's departing figure with a grief-stricken expression. Big brotherin, why do you have to force me to face this cruel reality? Woof. A wry smile appeared on Enlin's face. You can't blame me for this. It's like a pot falling from the sky. Little Xie was also a little disappointed. She was still waiting for Enlin to succumb to Mao Chen's enticement and do something inappropriate. Only then would she be able to kill him with a borrowed knife. That's right, borrow Xiaolan's knife. The three of them continued onward. Not long after that, they arrived at a very intricate courtyard. Dabai carefully pushed open the door before calling out, Father, Mother, I'm back, woof! A slender and beautiful white dog was meditating, and it slowly opened its bright eyes with a smile. Dabai, you're back. An adorable and mighty Dabai dog was sunbathing, and it also opened its eyes lazily before its eyes lit up. Yo, Dabai, you're back with Enlin. Enlin immediately extended a greeting with a smile. Junior Enlin pays his respects to Senior Bai Xian and Senior Chun. No need to be so polite, we're all family, Bai Xian said with a buoyant smile. He was one of the 3 immortal beast overlords of the mythological beast sect, but Enlin was the sect leader of the 4-9 immortal sect, so his status wasn't inferior to his. Come, have a seat. Chun also became more enthusiastic, and she brought out a table and a chair from her storage ring. Not only did she brew some tea, but she also brought out a few spirit fruit. There's no need to be so polite, Mr. Enlin. Just treat this as your home. We haven't thanked you yet. Then I won't hold back. Enlin wasn't a pretentious person, and he sat down before munching on a valuable spirit fruit. Bai Xian looked at Enlin with approval in his eyes, and he was extremely surprised and elated. Enlin had achieved so much at such a young age, and Dabai's cultivation base had also progressed at a rapid pace by following him. Bai Xian had made the right decision to allow Dabai to follow Enlin in the past, and it looked like he had made the right decision. Chun was also becoming more and more fond of Enlin. What a handsome and adorable young man! Dabai couldn't help but feel a little aggrieved when he saw that Bai Xian and Chun's eyes were all focused on Enlin, and they completely ignored this child who had finally returned home after such a long time. Right at this moment, Chun finally turned to Dabai. The first thing he said was, Dabai, did you come back to find Qing Hua and marry her? Dabai,